You ready?
Born that way.
Here we are. We're back in the Iron Sights podcast. I have the Pannones in the house, specifically Vetty and Mike Pannone. Mike, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it.
This, humor me for a second here. This serves as a major milestone for myself and the podcast when I look at my journey and kind of how this thing got started, specifically in an episode like this, which we call the After Dark version.
Okay.
The impetus for the start of the podcast was because I had really entered in this journey of learning more about the firearms training space, the world of preparedness, and all the things that come along with that. And I was really searching when I got into it for what were the good messages? How was it? Well, I was listening to all these people. I don't want to say I was confused. I was troubled. About, I'm hearing all these things. Some people are mad at other people for certain things. There's all this kind of stuff going on. And I was looking for like the voices of reason and the people that I could really extract some value from. And I was also, who were some of those characters that were really respecting other characters and propping them up. And of course, your name came up in your Instagram and all the things that you'd done. It popped up very early for me. And I used that over the years as a basis for kind of a litmus to come back to on, when I kind of categorize the characters and the people. You've been a huge influence on me. So to just have you in the studio sitting across the table from me I'm honored. So thanks for coming out here, man.
I'm honored to be here, man. Thanks.
I mean, making the trip all the way out. So I don't want to, this interview is going to be about you, and I have so many questions, and I think a lot of other people might too. And one of those things is just kind of getting to know you a little bit better beyond what I already do, and kind of talk about you and your history and who is Mike Pannone?
Yeah.
Let's start with that question, man.
How far back do you want to go?
You can start wherever you want. So here's what I tell people. I go, hey, you can start and finish wherever you want. You just have to be ready for me to stop and interrupt to maybe get some details on stuff.
Yeah, I think that probably most people are just interested in the kind of the military forward part of it, because the rest of it is everybody's got their, whatever past life. I mean, I was born in Italy. Wasn't even born here, but my dad.
That's an interesting fact.
Yeah, my dad was worked for, I believe it was Fiat for the aircraft division, but born of American parents, so came over here. Grew up working in my dad's refinery. My dad had a precious metals refinery, so I grew up as a kid working in a furnace room.
Okay.
And then was actually afforded, even to my own neglect, a really good education. I went to a really, actually, strangely enough, really good boarding school, which was interesting because you juxtaposed me working in the ironbound section of Newark in the inner city, in a refinery, and then in the wintertime going to a really fancy boarding school.
So kids just didn't do this? This was very unnormal.
It was very, very unheard of. So I had this kind of dichotomy, like right there. I started to learn things that you don't learn in a homogeneous world where everybody's just like you and they all live in the same kind of houses in the same neighborhood and everybody knows everybody. So that was something that was kind of unique.
Can you give me an example of that? Like something that maybe stood out for you early on?
There is a code that you learn in the street that you don't learn in suburbia.
Okay.
And effectively, if you look at the ironbound section of Newark, I was the only white kid in an all, black neighborhood.
That's a thing.
And so it is a thing. And so you learn at that point that you earn the right to be left alone. And that's only done one way. And so and once you earn that, you're cool. Like but you have to stand your ground. If that means you take a beating, then so be it. But you earn that right to be left unmolested, so to speak. And so that's something that you don't really learn in suburbia, and you do to a certain extent, but not the same as you earn in the hood. So it's like that's something that people take for granted that'll be afforded to them. That isn't always the case. And then being able to interact with people and figure out things that are common, even though you come from different circumstances. You talk things that you talk about are things that you find commonly interesting. It was just a acculturation that I got going from an urban inner city environment to a snotty, prep school kind of thing. And there's foibles of the human condition, jealousies and all that stuff that are all the same. It doesn't matter where you're from. People act like people.
Right.
They just have different resources to be an ass about it. So I learned a lot from that. And then went to college and played lacrosse in college.
Lacrosse. Okay. I didn't know that. All right.
At a nationally ranked school there. And did that for a couple of years and actually, long story short, family business got into a big court case and the business failed. So my college failed. So I ended up going in the Marine Corps.
You mean financially?
Yeah, financially.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So ended up going to the Marine Corps and went straight into reconnaissance. I was fortunate. I was one of the first guys that was able to go out of the infantry course, the School of Infantry, and go straight to the amphibious reconnaissance course at the time, which is now BRC. It's all been taken to the West Coast, which is a whole other topic because they've done an incredible job turning the reconnaissance community into a first-rate special operations unit, even if they don't get the name special operations. But so I went to amphibious reconnaissance course, then I went to 3rd Recon Battalion in Okinawa. And that's where I really learned the whole like soldiering part and really started to love the specialized part of the military. And then it just went from there. I went through.
Yeah, hold on just a second. Time out. So where are we in time in terms of the Marine Corps and then specifically Okinawa? Like what years?
Late 80s.
Okay.
So it's 86, 87, 88.
So this is pre-Iraq.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's way pre-Iraq. And then I went from Okinawa to a couple different reconnaissance units. I was in 3rd Recon and 2nd Recon and 3rd Force. And I ended up switching services in 91 and went straight into SF. So I went to
Marine Corps to Army.
Yep. Okay. Went through the selection, SF selection, SFAS, and then I went to the Q course as a weapons sergeant. And then I went to Tagalog language school. And then I went to first group over in Okinawa, actually. I went straight to Okinawa, which was another first, because most people, when I went into reconnaissance, didn't go straight to a recon unit. They went to a regular infantry unit and then went to a reconnaissance unit. And I was one of the first few people that went straight to a recon unit, went to school and to a recon unit, as opposed to going to the infantry, then going to recon unit, then going back to the reconnaissance course. So I was at a couple spots where it pushed my career forward faster.
Couple questions on this. One, well, let's stay with the Marine Corps and then we'll go to the switch. What was it that was pushing that? Was it just your aptitude or was it where the Marine Corps was at that time and what they were trying to get done? What were the? It's
another story how I even got into. I was going to infantry training, and second Recon Battalion had an NDOC, so I took it. I took the NDOC and I passed, and I was selected. And I had also been screened to be a presidential guard, to go to Camp David and be one of the presidential guards. And then I found out what that was. It was basically your first 4 years, you're a gate guard. Mm-hmm. And then maybe if you stay there, you'll get a cool, post. And I was going to be a security guard in a fancy uniform.
Why were you picked for this? Why did you do the NDOC? You chose to do this, or
I chose to do the NDOC.
Okay, gotcha.
When I went through, they look at your GT scores, your IQ scores and all that stuff. And then they go, would you be interested in this program? And everybody tells you, oh, you'll be protecting the president and all that stuff. And it's not. It's a kind of sham. It is. But
so right, I made another decision.
Yeah, I got on that program and then I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do. And then, like I said, that the reason that I ended up in where I ended up is because I went into the company commander when I was in the infantry course and I said, hey, I want a DOR from the Presidential Guard program. And he's like, why? And I was like, well, I came in the Marine Corps to be an infantryman, not a security guard. And he freaking exploded. His last posting had been at Camp David.
It was just a personal insult.
Oh, yeah. Right, so it was a complete personal insult. Yeah, you're a security guard. I want to be a Marine, not a security guard like you. Like,
well done, Mike. Well done.
Yeah, good job. Good way to step on your Jimmy with golf shoes. And so he explodes. And who the F, and screaming and yelling and berating me. And you're going to a Victor unit. You're going to go to the Rock. So he was going to put me in a rotating unit going to Okinawa. And he's like, and this is a whole, it's a whole interconnect. It's kind of a funny story. Back up my platoon sergeant in training. Me and a buddy of mine, Johnny Brazell, drank a lot, and we were not upstanding citizens for the lack. So at one point we got in a fight and drunk in the middle of the street, and the MPs grabbed us. Okay. This was at Camp Geiger, and then they brought us in, and he was like the staff duty. So he snatches us up, and he's like, all right, you idiots, go and get cleaned up and get in the barracks. You're confined, all that. So we go into the shower. They have a giant shower room. So we're both still, shithouse drunk, and we're arguing, yelling at each other. And I forgot what he did. I think he rat-tailed me really freaking hard with a towel. It hurt. And I turned around and I fired a bar of soap at him and missed him, and it went through the window. It shattered the window and went out to the street.
This is getting better.
Oh yeah, and the gunny was walking down the street. So he's walking down the street at like 2 a.m, and a bar of soap comes flying, smashes through a window. So that's another one. He comes in there and he deals with that. But there was a part of him that actually kind of liked us because we were like old school jarheads. We were just kind of
that's probably him.
Probably reminded him. And we were just brawling, but we were good in the field. We shot well. We did all the stuff, all the Marine stuff we were good at. We just had some
pent up energy.
Yes, we had a lot of energy. So he, he freaking cuffed us up a little bit, smacked us around a little bit, threw us in our squad bay, and so he had an affinity for us. Like he would seek us out, but he would mess with us, but you could tell it was like the grumpy guy that kind of likes you. He's like, "Oh, get over here, you friggin' son of what are you guys doing?" Like he was. So that's my connection. I'm gonna get sent to a rotating unit, a Victor unit that's gonna go to Okinawa and do my first pump on Okinawa. We're getting ready to get on a bus to leave, and he's like, "Pannone, come here." Like, "Hey, Gunny, what's up?" He goes, "Get the fuck over here, you asshole." I'm like, which is the way he talked to me. I walk over there, and he sticks a folder in my hand. He goes, "Read it on the bus. You owe me." I'm like, "Okay." I get on the bus, and I still had to go to Okinawa because I was slated for 3rd Marine Division.
Okay.
But he got me orders to go to the amphibious reconnaissance course before en route to Okinawa, which means I was going to go to 3rd Recon Battalion.
Wow.
And I got that because I had already passed the 2nd Recon Indoc. And he knew all of it. So he was
looking out for you.
Yeah, he was totally looking out for me. So that completely changed my military experience. Because, 3 weeks later, I was in Fort Story, jumping out of the back of helicopters, swimming in the, ocean and stuff. It was like, so I knew. And then I got to do cool, like commando-ish stuff. I'm like, I remember helocasting at night, doing a 2,500 meter swim, helocasting at night and hitting the water and coming up. And I think I was with Frank Bedient, but I'm not, I believe I was with Frank Bedient. The guy, he was a guy from 2nd Force, but came up and I was like, I'll do this until I die. Like, I'm going to do this forever. This is where I'm supposed to be. Like, I knew it that day. I'm like, okay, swam in. It's like, you're tired and you're miserable and you're getting jacked with, but it was built for it. It's what I wanted to do. And that was, I also knew that I wanted to do special stuff in the military. I didn't, not that there was anything wrong with it, but I liked the air stuff. I like the jumping in the helicopters and all that, which is truthfully there's a lot more of that's been mainlined into the infantry and the Marine Corps than people know. It is, the Marine Corps is becoming very, very, very special operations-ish, even as a large element, the littoral units and all that. The Marine Corps has come a hell of a long way. It's very special now in a way that really is impressive. But
for you, there's going to be a ceiling to this because this hadn't all been developed yet.
Yeah, now you've got MARSOC in the Marine Corps, which didn't exist. I was in reconnaissance, which was the specialized unit within the infantry because I was still an infantryman. I was in 0311, and then my secondary MOS was 0321, and then 8654, which is para, scuba, marine, and all that stuff. Now it's its own MOS. It's its own. You can come in and go straight into reconnaissance. There was no MARSOC at the time. So we did special operations missions. We did VBSS and, in extremist stuff, but we weren't a sanctioned special operations unit, which is why I went to the Army.
So that's what I was wondering about. Yeah. Like, why the switch? I thought you were going to tell me the dude gave you the boot and like you had to take this, otherwise it was going to be bad things for you. It's actually the opposite.
Yeah, I couldn't get promoted. I could get promoted. I did get promoted, but it was much slower than the Army. It was hard to get schooling because there was limited stuff. This is, late 80s, early 90s. You didn't get sanctioned missions because you weren't a sanctioned special operations unit. So we would do stuff that the Navy did,
but you'd never get the call.
But they would get the call before us because they were an actual SOCOM unit. So it reached a point where it's like, I'm like, if I'm going to make a career out of this, I need to go someplace where I can actually, go up the chain and get the training and all that. And I was actually in Hawaii at the time. I was stationed in Hawaii, and I worked at a place called Security Equipment Corporation, which was a gun shop at night. Guy walked in, and
so you're working a part-time job.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
To pay for my gun habit.
Got it.
So a guy walks in. I have not this watch, but I used to have a Chronosport, Chronosport UDT, which was stolen from my locker. If you're listening, you're an asshole for stealing it out of my locker, whoever you are. But anyway, I had a really nice dive watch that was issued to me. So a guy walks in. He's like, "Oh wow, it's a cool watch. Where'd you get it?" I was like, "I was issued to me." And he's like, "Oh, are you a SEAL?" I'm like, "No, I'm a Marine. I was a Marine diver." He's like, "Oh, cool." And he goes, "Do you ever think about joining the Army?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "Do you ever think about going to SF?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, we have a program and you go straight to SF and blah, blah, blah." I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "Well, you're going to have to get out of the Army or get out of the Marine Corps and go into the Army." So when my contract was up, I literally was like at 23:59:59, I was in the Marine Corps, and at 0:00 second, I was in the Army. So that's the overlap of the two. And I went straight to Fort Bragg, or whatever it's called now, and went through like this pre-selection course, which wasn't very hard. And then I went to selection, which was actually, kind of a kick in the jimmy. And then I went through all the training and ended up in first group over in Okinawa, which is funny because the team that put me through pre-scuba when I was a Marine in Okinawa, I went to that same team. So my picture was already on the wall.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. All right. So full circle.
Yeah. So now I'm back in Okinawa, but I'm an SF guy. And then I was in Okinawa, and then I came back to Fort Lewis. I was in Fort Lewis, and then I went from there just doing SF stuff, traveling all around Asia, which was a freaking awesome time. I was on a really good team. I was on a dive team the entire time I was in SF. And so I was around fit dudes and water guys. And so it was super cool. We were all still really close. One of the guys just came when I got married. He just came to the ceremony, flew out from Washington State, one of my buddies, Robbie Hunt. So went from there and got to do some cool stuff. I did Spetsnaz competition, which was like a best ranger, but in Russia with the Spetsnaz. That was kind of cool. Came off of that, went to selection, and made it in 97, and then went to the unit, and then that's where it started.
Yeah, so you caught us up there with timeline. With 97, you're just entering the unit at that point. Okay. I'm wondering, just going back to your Army or Marine Corps Army experience in terms of, and before we start getting maybe into any of this other stuff, were there major differences that you were taking away between the two branches and specifically what you're doing? Because you were you're already in the SF unit, you're kind of going straight there. So you're working with guys that have kind of been through everything. They've weeded out a lot of stuff. Similarities, differences between what you were noticing or what you saw and experienced in like Marine Corps SF versus Army SF. They all have different personalities. The reconnaissance community has a different personality from the SF community, which has different personality from JSOC. The reconnaissance community is very hard edge. Like that people demand performance of their peers, and it's kind of unforgiving. Like if you're screwing up, people are like, bro, you're screwing up. From the inside.
From the inside. We like, people don't tolerate people that give you half measures. They don't tolerate slackers. It's a rough crowd. If you're pulling your weight, it's cool. It's an incredible. I still have friends from there that I still keep in touch with. But it's like, it is unforgiving to people that don't give 100%. And everybody knows, like, you can't tell if I gave you 98.6% or 100%, but you can tell when I gave you 90% or 100% if you know me. And we live, eat, sleep, drink, everything together. So everybody knows everybody. And if you're slacking, then you get called out. And nobody wants a slacker. Nobody wants to screw up. No, it's kind of cutthroat, but in a good way. Like it's self-enforcing because the system will let people remain in it that may or may not like really be suited for it. But internally, people will ostracize them. They'll go, "You're not good enough to be here," and I'm just telling you that to your face, just so there's no illusions here. Just so you know, we don't think you make the grade. So it was that part of it. But it's very, very focused on proficiency, always trying to be better. And it's the poor kid on the other side of the tracks because everybody, especially when I was there, and not. Oh,
you mean Marine Corps versus
Marine Corps.
Army?
Yeah. Nobody really knew who we were. Nobody really knew what we did back then, back in the late 80s and the 90s. And then as it's progressed, it's become quite a legendary organization. And they've built the school that they have now. The basic reconnaissance course is it's a kick, man. It's no joke. It is no joke at all. It's high levels of proficiency, high requirements of physicality. Like it is a hard course on par with any special operations unit. And so it's like they have created this organization now that's pretty freaking epic. But at the time, nobody knew who.
Gotcha.
Yeah, who you were. You're just this unknown.
Is it fair to say you guys might have a little chip on your shoulder?
Yeah, a big chip on our shoulder. Like we're better than you guys, than other people. We're better than you at things, but we don't get any credit for it because we're not a sanction. Nobody even sees us. We're invisible. And as you start talking about different, specialized mission sets, doing VBSS or GoPlats, gas and oil platforms, all that kind of stuff. And you look at it and go,
that's a Navy job.
Yeah.
And somebody else's mind. Yeah.
But then you look at it and go, the Marine Corps is the ground combat element of the Navy. And there was a whole thing between why do we have a Navy special operations unit, but the Marine Corps doesn't have a special operations unit, but the Marine Corps is the ground combat element of the Navy. There's a lot of, and the fact that Marines couldn't go to BUD, so we couldn't even be in the special operations unit that the Navy has, wouldn't even allow Marines to go to it, which was a huge,
at the time. Yeah.
It was you still can't now.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
No, you still can't. And that was a huge bone of contention. Like when I was in the late 80s and the 90s, why do you have the Marine Corps is part of the naval service. If you get an award, best, in the highest traditions of the Marine Corps and the naval service, because the Marine Corps is part of the Department of the Navy. And why do you have a special unit there that doesn't allow Marines who are in the naval service, who fall under, auspices of the Navy? Why are they not allowed to try out? I
get it.
Big heartburn on that.
Yeah, I get it. So as you're moving into the Army and now you're doing all this stuff on the other side, kind of seeing it, you were that guy that made the transition, so I'm sure people are seeing that in you. And again, some of the question, part of that question is the personality types, which you started with. The personality of recon is a little bit different than what you experienced.
It's hard. You have to prove everything beyond a reasonable doubt. And then as soon as you do, whatever your best performance is becomes your baseline.
Got it.
Okay. Whatever your best performance is, now everything you do should be better than that. It's a hard edge. SF was way more laid back. There's still different teams had different responsibilities, different personalities, different requirements. I was on a dive team, so we were more of a hard edge. We were much more like the reconnaissance side. Divers are kind of that way. You get around each other, Navy guys, Army guys, Marines. We're all kind of, there's something about that water thing that pulls out a certain type of person. So the SEALs that I've known that are buddies of mine, and SF guys that are divers, and the recon guys are we're much more alike than other parts of that. But overall, SF is a more laid back, less hard edge environment. And you kind of have to be, because you're working with partner forces and host nations, and you're training people. And
okay, that's a good interesting comparison, and for the reasons why.
Yes, because
it's a little bit, you are letting other people in and you have to interact with other people versus this other thing, which is very, very contained.
Yes, it's insular in the other units, which makes it hard for other units when you start doing a joint combined training. You do JSETs where you're going and you're training. Like we were training the Philippine military or the Thai military in the 90s. We were helping them rebuild their militaries. It was really hard to have units that didn't have that as a dedicated mission do it, because they don't know how to get along with them. Like we would sit down and eat with them. We'd be out with the Philmars or the Philippine SF or the Thai Rangers, and we'd sit down and have lunch with them, whatever they're eating. Now, guess what? We'll sit there. We were in New Guinea. We sat down with the members of the New Guinea Defense Force and ate with them. And they actually came back and were like, well, what are you doing? Like, well, we're just eating. Or is it okay if we, nobody's ever eaten with us before? And that's part of the whole SF tradition. Like you live with the locals, you go native. Like, hey, if we're having sausage and, potatoes and eggs and onions in New Guinea, then that's what we have. And
so the way I look at this is like that, when you say it's laid back, I don't see that as I see where maybe some people, I have no connection to this. This is just my outside looking in. Some people might hear that and go, that's a shot, or that's a bad thing. Having you explain it that way, I'm going, no, it's actually a prerequisite.
Yeah, you have to be that way.
You have to be that way.
But you have to be able to turn it on when you conduct combat operations. Right, you have to have both sides of
personality.
It's a personality type, and it's an emotional intelligence thing. You have to understand as well that when you're working with the New Guinea Defense Force, you take the wins that you're going to take based on their experience level. You're not creating, infantrymen in the Marine Corps or 82nd Airborne or the Rangers.
You got what you got.
Yeah, this is who you have. You have people that the first time they wore shoes was the boots that you gave them 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Like that kind of stuff. And it's nothing against that. Just that's the life they led. They're not bad people. They'll work hard. If you earn their respect, they'll do great things. But you have to be patient and go, these are not Western soldiers that I'm just training to a higher level. These are people that have come out of tribes, out of the hills or out of the shanty towns, and now you're trying to turn them into soldiers and train them up. And like we were in New Guinea, they were going to Bougainville to fight the Bougainville Resistance Army. You're training these guys to go to war, and this guy just put shoes on for the first time in his whole life.
Wild, actually, to think about.
Yeah, it takes a different level. And then you go to the technical side, you go to JSOC, and that is technical. That is corporate. It is like, listen, everything is times and scores and weights and efficiency, and it is building the perfect mousetrap and then finding the perfect mousetrap and making it more perfect. Like it is a level of precision that I didn't even know existed in the military. And then you get there and everything is scored and timed and graded and evaluated and critiqued. And there's no time off. There's no, we're just screwing around. No, it's a workplace. You go there and you're putting points on the scoreboard, or we'll find somebody else.
So there's a little mystery, and there's a lot of legend and lore around, this unit. To my knowledge, there's about 1,200, but only about 1,200 guys that have ever gone through this thing, that have ever walked through the doors of that building, if you will, that corporation. Yep. And so you'd kind of had this interesting transition and coming at it from this very insulated, place to then now being exposed to this other way of doing things because that was the job. Now walking into this other thing, which sounds, again, very insulated.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something there about emotional intelligence. I want to talk to you about like IQ versus EQ, emotional intelligence versus, your IQ score. Walking into this specialized unit and what the similarities or differences was, and how do they select for this? Like, what was your experience with that selection process?
It's very individualized, and the guys going through it, like I'm one of the guys that went through it. I have ideas of what they're looking for, but nobody really knows except people at the highest level and people that work in, the selection course and all that. And even then, only a handful of people really know what or if or the kind of criteria. It's a freaking mystery even to us. Okay. But the things that they do tell you is a couple things, and you put it in layman's terms. One, they're looking for someone that's trainable. Okay.
Makes sense.
And that's when they say trainable, they don't mean trainable in just military skills. They mean I could teach you to do anything. I can teach you to fix trucks. I can teach you to put in light fixtures. I can do anything. You are capable of learning anything that we want you to learn. Okay. That's what they want. And what people don't understand as well is they're not, and this was told to me by a sergeant major at the unit, where a lot of organizations will think, or a lot of people think organizations they want all guys from SF and the Rangers, or they want all guys that are infantry SF or the Rangers. They figure because that's foundational.
It's Army.
Yeah.
Right?
It's foundational skills.
They've been through the thing.
Yeah. And what he said is, we're not buying, he goes, the way we view it is, we're not buying knives. We want raw steel, and we'll forge it the way we want, and we'll grind it the way we want. We'll make knives. We just want good steel. We don't want your knife. We'll make our own knives. We just want really good steel, and we'll forge that and create what we want out of it. You don't even know what we need. You don't know what we require for our knives. We do. So just sell us good steel and we'll deal with it from there. And that's something that people don't understand, because they think, well, I was in the Ranger Regiment for 12 years and I came here and I didn't make it. Or I was in the 82nd. I worked all the way, I was a LURS team leader. I was, went to Ranger school, like all the way through. I was the top of everything. I'm a super fit guy and I didn't make it. And it's, you can teach a monkey to carry heavy weight for long distance, but you can't teach him to think. And it's like, now you start looking at the way that we screen people and the difficulty of just the selection course, the tasks that you have to do, the way you have to navigate, and the difficulty of the navigation and the creative problem solving that's required. It requires it.
That's what they're testing.
Yes.
Not can you get through the waypoints.
Yeah.
It's how are you doing it?
How can you do that? Can you take in that information? Can you remember it? What mistakes do you make? There's a lot of there. There's there's that side of it, and your ability to get along with people that you don't like, because they don't care if you and I are working together. They don't care if Scott and Mike like each other. They don't care if Scott has all the criteria and Mike has all the criteria. You're both good operators. Just work. Your personal stuff is exactly that. It's not work stuff. It's personal stuff. So keep it under your hat. And when you both go home at night, you don't have to go to each other's house and barbecue, but you have to work together. And if you can't, then you're demonstrating a lack of emotional intelligence. And so
that's interesting, because from a cultural perspective, kind of what you see on the outside and what's been portrayed, let's say in cinema, movies, whatever, or even, let's just say, like you see it all the time elsewhere, outside of that, social media, whatever else, is that in other specialized units, it is very much like we drink together, we party together, we surf together, we chase girls together. It's kind of been glorified or whatever. And what I hear you saying is that's not part of the culture there at all. In fact, it's frowned upon.
It's not a requirement.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, some guys will hang out together because, like, if you and I just happen to be really tight and our wives are really tight, maybe we'll hang out together. But it's not like everybody from this team or this troop, we all hang out together. We all do. It's just not that way.
It's a cultural difference.
We are so exposed. And when I was there, I mean, who knows? It could have changed, but I doubt it because it's still the organization that it was. It's just more refined even. It's better now than it was then. But it's people, we spend so much time together under arduous conditions, under high pressure conditions where you have to perform at an extremely high level. I tell people, it's the NFL. You're in the NFL now. And if you don't perform at that level, they'll either find somebody else to replace you that will perform at that level, or they'll just have an empty locker. They would rather have an empty locker than a guy filling a locker who can't perform. And so it's not like it is an organization that has a very specific and important task. And so they don't have time for that stuff. And so when you start to identify yourself as someone that can't get along with people, that's a personal issue. This is work. You don't have to like me. You have to work with me though. And you have certain requirements when you work with me. And I think that's it is something that people find really difficult to get past their own personal bias. I don't like this guy. Well, that's your problem. Like, is he getting the job done? Is he good at what he does? Yes. There are going to be personality clashes. And that's one of the requirements. You have to learn how to work with people that you may not necessarily like, but you have to work with them like you like them. Like, they have to be able to trust you when it comes down to, crunch time. And I think that's, that
should be consistent against a lot of the teams in different.
It should be,
obviously.
And then when at the end of, like, you're together all the time, you're constantly together. It's nice to just go home and not be around it. It honestly is. It's like, it's enough. You need a break from it. You need to take off that ruck and just sit on your couch and have a drink and be like, okay, I'm just at home now. I'm going to go refinish my deck. It has nothing to do.
You don't need to go to the bar with the other guys and hang out now after work.
Exactly. And I think that's something that, because of the nature of the intensity of that and the requirements, like, you're always on the clock. You walk through the gate and it's on. It's work time, period. Like, and it will be crushing if you're prone to that kind of stress upsetting you or unnerving you. It'll crush you. You just got to go in there. I'll give you 100%. And if tomorrow you decide my 100% isn't enough, then I'll be out of a job. It is what it is. But the part that you deal with emotionally as an individual, go, I'm going to have to give you 100%. And 100% today is not going to be the same as 100% yesterday. It's just not. But you have to know that I'm giving it everything I've got. And if that's not enough, then so be it. But I don't ever have to look in the mirror and go, you know what? I gave him 92% and I got fired. Or they don't ever have to question, is he really giving me everything he's got, or is he holding back a little bit? Like, there is a level of professionalism there that is different, because they won't tolerate anything else. They just like we don't have time for this. Like, and so it's its own different animal. There's nothing like it for a bunch of reasons that most people don't even understand. And it's what makes it, to me, arguably the best assault unit in the history of the world, because they literally don't tolerate crap. They're like, no, we don't have time for that. And I think it makes it unique.
I think that you describe really, for me, this is easier for me to understand. Like, you described it as corporate. Mm-hmm. And, I've worked in that world, so I understand what that is. A lot of time there's a lot of sterility. There's very clear guidelines. There's do's and don'ts. Some are written down, and some of them are just made clear to you by the other people, at the different levels that you're working with. Versus on the other side of, people, you may look at things like more of a fraternity. And that's not to say there's not a fraternity of guys that came out of the union you're talking about. My point is like sort of the behaviors and the culture of, we hang out together, we perform together, we win together, we lose together, we do all this stuff. But maybe there's not that much separation in the outside of that. What are the rules the rule set that we're all following?
Here's the thing, they both exist. But the corporate, the brotherhood side is subordinate to the corporate side, because the corporate side is
that's a good way of looking at it.
Is points on the scoreboard. Okay. It's profit margins. It's, you know what I'm saying. It's like, it's a number. It's like, we have a level of proficiency on the brotherhood side. Yeah, I still have friends there that would do anything for. There's still guys that
makes sense.
Get out, and they've been through so much together that they're bonded in that regard. And they may not talk to each other for 9 months, and then just pick up the phone and talk for 4 hours and then see each other a week later and wherever. But it's like, there's that side, but that side is the personal side, and it still exists. And the amount of pressure and difficulty that you deal with together bonds you together. But it is subordinate to the mission side, the corporate side. When I say corporate, that's the mission. That's the dollars and cents. That's the points on the scoreboard. And that drives it. That's what's in charge. Getting performance out of that brotherhood is what's driving the train.
It's interesting. So if I sit back, thank you for detailing that for me, because you're the first guy I've had in front of me that's come from this background and been able to describe it that way, or even wanted to, for that matter. So I'll give you credit for that. Yeah. And thank you. But also, when I see kind of what's happening, again, I study the characters, I kind of watch what's going on. Going back to the brotherhood and the connections and the disconnections at the same time. I think what we see a lot of time in some of these other communities is just people being pissed at one another. They're very divided. There's a lot of drama, if you want to call it that, or whatever else. There's a lot of hate, distaste, and I would say kind of dysfunction. And I think, like, if you had to divide it 50-50, this part of that community thinks this way and this part of it thinks that way. They both kind of at the root are kind of arguing about the same things. Mm-hmm. Like, I should be able to do this because, and this other one's like, well, you shouldn't be able to do that, but you should be, because I'm basically saying the same thing. It's kind of weird. Yeah. My point of that is the brotherhood maybe was the primary thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what everything was kind of rooted in.
Yeah.
Whatever branch, whatever thing you're working in. Like, I'm not calling anybody specifically out, but I think people listening will be like, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
My point is like, I have never seen, again, maybe it's just because of pure numbers.
Yeah.
Again, we mentioned maybe 1,200 guys that have gone through this. Small group. I don't see that happening coming from that particular quote unquote unit. We're kind of
self-policing in a lot of ways. And, you know, it's, if I start leaving the reservation, at a minimum, a mutual friend of ours will freaking get on the phone with me and be like, bro, like, you off your meds? Like, what are you doing? Like, stop that. Just stop it. And if you've been in certain places, and you've been in good standing in that organization, it's a PhD. It's a certificate with a triangle and a dagger that says PhD in commando shit. And it's like, if nothing else, the people that are there have acquitted themselves extraordinarily well. And so everyone will at least give you a hearing. If you say, hey, listen, I'm interested in this, they'll go, well, he was one of those guys. Let's at least give him a shot. Like, they're kind of unique. Let's hear what he has to say. And you make or break your own thing. If you keep selling that, then you're doing it wrong. But if you just use it as, listen, I've proven that I can function at a super high level, at the highest level that was afforded to me in the military. Give me a shot. Just give me a hearing. They will. They absolutely will. And I've been the recipient of that. And I don't ever want to tarnish that, because I got that opportunity because I worked hard enough and ended up in that organization and left in good standing. And so this affords me, it's like, you get a PhD from Stanford. Just because you have a PhD from Stanford, people will listen to you. That's where I came from. That's the PhD from Stanford. That's the PhD from Harvard. It's like, and so it is something that you don't want to dishonor. You don't want to tarnish that. You don't want to sell that shamelessly as a marketing tool. I think it's in bad form, and I think it doesn't do justice to the organization. It doesn't honor that organization, because truth be told, without that stamp on your resume, you would be viewed as a different person, because you didn't. Just because you're a great quarterback, okay, in high school, and you were a great quarterback in college, but you never went to the NFL, okay, that doesn't mean you aren't a great quarterback. You didn't play in the NFL, bro. Like, sorry, like, that's just the way it is.
It's got weight.
Yeah, it's like you're not on that list, and people from where I come from understand that, and it is something that it's very honored, and you don't dishonor that. And if you do, like I said, people will let you know. They will let you know. They're not shy about getting on, and they'll do it offline. They'll call you up and go, dude, stop, just stop. And so I've never been even close to that at all, and consciously so. But I respect that part of it. And I think when you start shamelessly selling a brand, then you're selling something. You're selling a fantasy. Mm. You're not selling proficiency. This is what I'm capable of doing. Oh, he also used to be one of those guys. Okay, cool. I'm not selling that. That's my story. I'm selling what I know and what I can prove and what I can do on demand right here. And I think that's where you get the dichotomy, where you get people selling a fantasy. I used to be this guy. That's great.
This goes back to the very beginning of this, when I said I was listening to all these different people talking about different things, or showing, demonstrating, educating. And there's a different message coming from some of them, and you're one of those guys. And so this fills in a lot of blanks for me. I didn't know most of that story. Some of it I was semi-familiar with, because we've had some conversations just about the bits and pieces, but I didn't understand that. And I think I probably understand, like, if I see or hear Mike saying something now with the I understand it better, with the passion, with the attention and the intention of getting a particular message across, where it maybe comes from the roots, in terms of, I think proficiency is probably the right thing to attach to that. And also, I have to be honest, this is just my observation of Mike, also being annoyed if you see somebody else that could be doing a much better job of it. They're just doing it for the sake of putting out information. Yeah. And it lacks the proficiency, and it lacks the direction, and it lacks intention that you can connect to, connect them all. And maybe you looking at it going, dude, come on, man.
It lacks integrity.
That's what I'm saying. And that could be very frustrating for somebody like you, right?
It is.
And for me, but for you specifically.
The worst thing that you can be as a reconnaissance Marine, as an SF soldier, and as a unit operator is someone without integrity. Because what is it? He doesn't have integrity. What is that? What's the layman's term for that? He's a liar. He's a bullshitter. And if I can't trust you on everything, I can't trust you on anything.
Yeah.
So your integrity is like, integrity is like virginity. Once it's gone, it's gone. You can act like you got it back, but it's gone. It's like, and people don't realize you have to be good. You have to be good to your word. And that means what you present has to be presented be presented with integrity. And so when I see people that present things in this industry, in the shooting and tactical and all that, and I look at it and it's arguably false, and you can prove that, and yet they package it well and they market it well and they sell it along with the fantasy. I'm like, you're literally just using marketing to take people's money, like two hands at a time.
I get
and
this.
it's like, and I find it disingenuous, especially in this industry, and lacking morality, because what are we talking about? We're talking about items that kill people. We're talking about tactics that are used to save your own life and stop bad people from doing bad things. And you're putting out trash, but you're taking people's money. So your most scarce resource is time. Your second most scarce resource is money, because money takes time to make. I'm taking both of those, and I'm not making you any smarter or any better. Like, you're ripping people off. And that's what insults me, because I have a different experiential base. I know what the downside of that is. I know what the application side looks like. And it's not what you think it is, but you're selling it like you do know. And that's when you hear the people talk, they talk all tactical and, in a gunfight this or well, I'm like, just stop that. Stop that. Don't talk about things that you haven't participated in, because you really don't understand them at the level that you're presenting. Just talk about the component skills required.
So I was just going to say, it doesn't mean you can't talk about the concepts, but let's not give specific solutions to a specific problem set, because they're all different. You also haven't had the experience to maybe back up from that and reflect on that sort of objectively and go like, is that really what again, my experience is different than, or your experience is different than everybody else's or anybody else's, and they always will be. But how do you
can relate it to things that are not, like, you can disregard my experience and what I've done, and look at it and go, think about it from the perspective of a sporting event. I use boxing all the time. You have to learn the component skills. You have to learn how to throw a proper jab and a cross and a hook and an uppercut and all that, okay? You got to learn how to do all that, and you have to be really good at it. Then you apply it, okay, against someone when you're sparring, okay? And then you apply all of that against someone that you actually fight. But you have to go through the whole sequence. Yeah, you have and there's things that you learn actually fighting someone, getting in the ring and fighting someone, because that's very different than hitting focus mitts in a bag.
Very.
And you can look like Johnny Badass hitting focus mitts in a bag. Okay, but when you get in the ring, maybe it doesn't translate, because there's an emotional component there, and there's a dynamic adversary that doesn't exist. And when you act like, to me, hitting focus mitts and a heavy bag is what has become simunitions in training. People run around and play expensive grab-ass paintball, and they think that's the same thing. I'm like, no, there's no downside here. If you make a mistake when you're really doing this, you'll get shot.
Or punched in the face.
Yeah, or punched in the face if you're boxing. Like, there's an immediate and there's sometimes catastrophic penalty for doing dumb stuff, and people become far less cavalier when what's connected to a mistake is injury. And so it's like, I see these people and in this industry, and that's what insults me, because I know that the world that we live in has become progressively more dangerous, especially for law enforcement. And that's what the bulk of what I work with.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're facing a threat that is unparalleled in the history of this country, honestly. And it's a diffused threat. It's not like the 20s, the roaring 20s, when they were fighting Al Capone's gang. And yeah, there was a rifle threat and there was a lot of violence, but it was very localized. There were certain people that did that, but overwhelmingly, most people just stayed away from the cops. Now you have people that are challenging them, trying to kill them on purpose, just randomly. Like, it's a more dangerous place. And so you don't have time. You don't have the luxury of wasting time doing, adventure camp training. This stuff has to be provable and it has to work. And I think, to me, it tells me that either you don't know or you don't care, because you're making your money.
That goes back to the integrity piece. Yep. Yeah. Wow. So that was actually a great transition into kind of talking industry stuff and kind of what you're doing now. Just before I have a few more questions on that. Just before we leave, I mean, eventually your time in the Army is done. Your time at the unit, JSOC, is done. And you move on. What is that transition like for you? Just kind of moving on. Where did it start? Because did you jump right into CTT Solutions, or how'd that look? Because I understand there's a little bit of history here, and I don't know what it is.
So I got out in 2000. I had an explosive injury, lost my right eye. And so right before all the wars kicked off, I I medically retired.
This is a training thing.
Yeah, we were at a JRX doing recovering down pilots and stuff. That was where we were practicing. So I got out and I went from a national asset to not anonymity, but obscurity. I'm just nobody. I'm just some dude with a messed up face, missing an eye. Like
it's a rough transition.
It's like all of a sudden you roll out the gate, hand in your badge, and you're nobody. You're just some other dude in the line at Starbucks with a bunch of scars on your face. And so that transition within a year, we're at war. And it was like, holy shit, I spent my whole life training for this. Yeah. And it's the Super Bowl starting, and I'm not even on the sidelines. I'm watching it from my couch. And it was just like, I'm find my way back into this. I'll find my way into the fight with a rifle somehow. I'll get back into this somehow. I'll find a way to be a part of this. And it literally, like a couple days later, I got a phone call from a old sergeant major of mine, and I started working the Air Marshal program, helped stand that up this is, the war started in September. The first attack was September 11th. So January 1, I was in Chicago screening for the Air Marshal program.
Wow.
Of 2002, we helped stand that up. And then a year later, in 2003, I was in Iraq. And I started doing high-risk contracting for PSD for the Iraqi Media Network initially, when they were replacing all the towers and standing up the Iraqi Media Network in 2003. And then in 2004, I was the first project manager hired by Triple Canopy. And then I mounted the first teams into country and started doing PSD for the governorate coordinator for Diyala province out of Tikrit, and did that. And then I went into another project. It was initially called the IED Task Force. And then while I was there, it became Asymmetric Warfare Group. And I was a ground combat advisor in the Marine sector in Anbar in 2005. So I did a regular combat rotation with the Marines. So it was like, I just kind of, I floated from contract to contract and just kept going overseas for those 3 years. And I learned a ton. And I got to see what was important for me is at that level of intensity, I got to see if I was the guy that I thought I was. And that to me emotionally was really important because I spent my whole life doing it. It's like, can I really do the biz?
Right.
Like, I trained for the big game and I didn't get to play it. Now the big game's on. I'm like, I'll redshirt. I'll get in there somehow.
Right.
And I got to see, and I was like, and it was good for me. I got to see, yep, I'm the guy I thought I was. There's some stuff that I think I could have been better at, and I started to refine. And there's other stuff that just came natural and it was exactly what I thought. And I'm like, I was happy to be tested after a lifetime of practicing something and not being able to really apply it at that level. Because I had done other stuff. I had done live operations before, but nothing like Iraq, nothing like that. And so I started to really understand my own self better. And that's what made it actually easy for me to step away from it. Not necessarily, I still miss it. I'll be honest with you. I still miss the rush and the excitement. Those wars are all gone. That's all over. But there was a point in my life where it was an adventure every day. You wake up in the morning, you're like, you literally wake up and you go, okay, we're going to go do this tonight. And especially was out with the Marines. And there's people out there that purposely want to see the end of your existence. Right. And then guess what? They're going to fail. And then we're going to do it the next night. And they're like, it's a world that's unique and it's addictive and all that stuff. But I got to do all that, and I got a tremendous amount of experience out of it, and a perspective that was very, very different. And that just segued. I left there. I did training with the Asymmetric Warfare Group for the guys going on the surge. So in 2007, I was at the 82nd for 38 weeks in 1 year, training all those guys because I had just come back. So the places that I had been. And the places they were going to, I had been.
Yes.
And so it's like, okay, I've been there. And there were guys that were in the course that were like, okay, I was there in 2004. What was it like in 2005? Yep. And so I had something to offer, which was really rewarding. And then, that at the end of that, I started working with Viking Tactics with Kyle Lamb. I was his senior instructor, so I helped him stand up his business.
I had no idea.
Yeah. And I was at his retirement, and then I was his first senior instructor. I helped him write a bunch of stuff and stand up his business. And then I went out on my own and 2009, and I've been that way ever since.
2009. So CTT Solutions been around since 2009. And it's been primarily law enforcement the entire time, correct?
It started out with, I started out with a major contract with BORTAC.
Okay.
And I ended up at the end of, actually in 2009 was the first year. That's when I started up September of 2009. I forgot what month it was in 2011, but I was awarded a Small Business Achievement Awardee my first year in business for the stuff I did with BORTAC. So
interesting.
I had a huge contract with them, which really got me going. And then from then on, I just spent a ton of time with LE, did a lot of civilian stuff too, a bunch of different machinations, but that's the business has been able to sustain throughout the changes in social media and all the rest.
So I'm just going to go back to this corporate mentality here and being able, like having a very solid structure, but then also being able to work within what may be very fluid structures, going back to your time with the Army, and then all this transition that's happening. Everybody has to make these transitions at some point. What's inevitable is change is going to happen. But it's interesting how you kind of, you're jumping into it, and at the very like onset of some very, like Viking Tax is still around, still doing its thing, right?
Yeah.
The BORTAC contract. How many other people were doing BORTAC contracts before you got into it?
Very few.
So that's my point.
Yeah.
So they're kind of at the beginning, and I imagine there's a lot of things. I'm going to use the term both, I guess, probably as an analogy, but also as a direct example. A lot of things are being authored during this time, and you're at the front of it.
Yeah.
I imagine like there's manual writing, there's program writing.
I wrote a couple books, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. So I don't but I don't know what they are. Well, actually, you know what one is. I know what one is. I don't know if you'll know. I might surprise you that I know this, but what type of stuff have you authored?
I wrote first thing I wrote was just an M4 handbook, which it was supposed to be the squad leader's handbook, and it's funny because one of my buddies who was still in the mill at the time was like, "Don't call it squad leader's handbook because no lieutenant will buy it.
Ever read it? Yeah,
I'll never read it." So I just made it the M4 handbook, but I sold a ton of those. We sold a ton of those, and it was a little handbook that had everything you needed to know about the M4, the operating system malfunctions, how to do reloads, leads for moving targets, all of it. It was oriented around guys going to Iraq and Afghanistan, and we sold. My buddy Eric, who's an SF with me, and then a branch guy. We sold a ton of it. We sold thousands of those.
And these are going to like other contracting companies or guys.
They were going mill guys, mostly military guys were buying them.
Oh, interesting.
Because it was a little spiral bound, like a notepad.
You could take with you and pack
you
away.
Put it in a freaking cargo pocket.
Gotcha.
So it's like guys had to give training to their people and want to know zero distances and bullet drop and all that. So that went really well. I wrote a couple segments in Eric's book, like a combat pistol shooting book. I wrote some stuff in there. And then I had a couple. I had an M4 handbook, I had an AK handbook because a lot of guys were carrying AKs overseas. I actually went back to the unit and taught an AK block it's on their land, which is that book.
Oh, interesting.
So back when they were doing a bunch of other different stuff. So it's like there was stuff I did, some writing stuff, I did curriculum, but what the biggest thing that I got, and to his credit, I think it started more with Kyle, because at the time there was only like Paul Howe, Larry Vickers, Kyle Lamb, Claggett, Steve Claggett, I think it is, from Dallas.
Some OGs.
Yeah, some serious. There was like 5 guys in the industry, and truth be told, Kyle was one of the first ones that started putting, because he shot 3-gun in USPSA, started putting more performance-based shooting into it. That was at the genesis. He initially did. Most people weren't doing that. Okay. With high accountability and really aggressive standards. That's where it started, and it's supercharged now. It's what we did back then is infantile compared to what we do now. Like what the requirements for shooting that Matt, Pranka, and has been pushing out, and Ben Steger and people like that. Yeah. It's just gone. I mean, it's gone to a national level. But that was the initial injection of performance-based shooting into training started really back then. And then it's evolved a lot. And then, like I said, in the last probably 4, I don't know when Matt got out, but I know that he was really he was the most vocal driving force for that. And I mean, full disclosure, he's a good friend of mine. And I admire the guy. He's a smart dude who really cares. What people come across, like people think I'm a hater or whatever. People think that people are abrasive, whatever. That's a personal opinion. But what he puts out is really useful and true. And it's had a really profound effect on me because it's very matter of fact. It's like these things they're mathematic. It's like, no, this is how things work, and I can repeat them. If you can repeat them, then there has to be a system to do that. And so that has changed.
It's gotten lost.
Yeah. Yes.
It's gotten lost is kind of what I hear you saying, and what I've seen in my own conversations, obviously with you and other people, that math problem has gotten lost a little bit. And there's been a lot of salt and pepper and noise and things that have worked itself into that math problem. Yeah. And that is probably largely driven and fueled by social media. Yes. And going back to the challenges with the integrity piece of the direction and the intention people are coming at things with.
I call it selling magic. Okay. You can sell proficiency. Honestly, you can have a proficiency, and if you can package it properly, you can explain it, and you can transfer that information, people will want to work with you. You're selling something of value. If you don't have that, you have to sell magic. You have to sell a gimmick. Okay, you have to sell one particular thing that you've refined or you've tweaked and put your name on.
It's a big market out there to sell a lot of things to. Yep.
Yeah. But the thing is that you're pulling something. Shooting is its own little niche. Like it's its own thing. You don't get to pull a part out of it and only sell that part, as far as I'm concerned. And that's what people do. They pull one thing out and they just sell that. And they don't do. They're not training people in a full spectrum manner. They're going, this is my shtick. This is what I do. And then when you see them, I call it marksmanship in application, not in isolation. And I teach it in application. And that's why I still compete. I shot a match last weekend. I'll shoot a match tomorrow or the next day. I'll shoot a match a week after that in California, in between two jobs. Like, you compete because that is the crucible. That's where you get to see, am I doing it as well as I think I am? And how am I doing it relative to my peers who, doesn't matter where you came from, they're all shooting hard and they're all pushing you. And like, is my proficiency at a level that's noteworthy? That's how you do it. But in the absence of that, that's why I do that. But if you don't do that, then you have to pick out one little niche, one little thing, and become really good at it. It becomes a freaking circus trick. It does. And outside of a controlled environment, you can't do it. You can't apply it. And there's a lot of that. And you see that with all the patch and badge and coin standards and all that. You take the people that are selling those and go shoot some matches. Like, watch them shoot. Yeah, honestly, like, my shooting is my shooting. You can see I post videos of me shooting all the time in matches. Yeah, like, but the bottom line is I'm out there doing it. I'm not just trying to sell a niche. I'm trying to sell full spectrum marksmanship and application. This is what it looks like. And that's a problem here because I shoot because I love to shoot. I'm doing fine. I mean, I'm not, people will go, oh, you don't like so-and-so, or you don't like this, or like the vehicle class I teach with Pat. Oh, you don't like this guy because he's cashing checks. I don't count on other people's money. In the end, it's still their money. That's not my money. I don't care. It's like, I look at what I do and go, am I happy with what I'm providing? And am I honestly providing the knowledge that I say I am? Am I really giving you something of value? And there's a lot of people out there, arguably, that are not, but are still taking money because they got a fancy marketing machine.
Where did this start? So, I mean, social media is a thing, and I think it's fueled it. Mm-hmm. But where did that start? Sorry, and let me back up on this for a second.
I can tell exactly.
I'm sure you have an opinion, or you can draw some direct, connect the dots here for me. But part of this is instinctually, and I think practically, I saw and understood what you just explained. Mm-hmm. And I've shared this, and I was sharing this last night with Vetti at the dinner table, just with regard to I can often parallel a lot of what you just talked about and what this industry shows up as, and where it shows up sometimes is what I've seen happen in the fitness industry over a long time. It's very similar. Very similar. And my approach to coaching people is always from a holistic perspective. Mm-hmm. Like, we have to look at the entirety of everything. Like, if you want to go step on stage and be a bodybuilder, you go do that. I'm not going to help you with that. Like, I've done it. I did it. I know what I know what that experience was for me. There's a formula for doing things, but I'm not into that because for most people, it creates issues, right? A lot of people get into it because there's an issue,
yes,
right? So they're driven into it emotionally, or it's something flashy, or somebody sold them something, and then they find out what the reality of that is, and they have to make compromises and things like that. At the end, oftentimes they wind up unhealthy. That's not everybody. I'm not saying, so you listen to this, I'm not saying bodybuilding is unhealthy. I'm saying people in bodybuilding are often unhealthy. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm saying. So again, drawing these parallels. Mm-hmm. In terms of where it started, that shit started in fitness and health and fitness way before my time. So I can't tell you exactly where. I know it's been fueled by social media, YouTube, all that kind of stuff, for sure. And when I say fueled, I mean some of the bad stuff and the things that the unhealthy part of it. But the holistic piece of it was the place that I always came at it from, because I don't care, like, at some point you're going to have to address the big picture. Mm-hmm. You can address this thing, get really good at this thing, but I'm telling you, it's going to come up for you at some point.
Absolutely.
I bet on that. And then over time, I recognize that through experience, knowledge, wisdom, like, I'm not wrong. I wasn't wrong about that then, and I'm not wrong about it now. So going back to how this thing evolved, where did this stuff start to get wildly kind of, I don't know, misplaced?
It started years ago. On YouTube, before there was really Instagram, and it started with Magpul. It started with the Magpul Dynamics.
I thought you were going to say that. Yeah.
Magpul Dynamics videos, and Travis Haley and Chris Costa doing all kinds of flamboyant stuff.
Yep.
And that began the entertainment community. That's where you went there to do cool stuff. And there's stuff that was arguably, like, I know the backstory on stuff. Okay. I'll give you a specific example. They call it the mag pull flip, where you snap the gun to the right and the magazine goes flying out. Well, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just, there's a button there that is purpose designed by Eugene Stoner. You just press it and the magazine falls out, unless the magazine doesn't fall out. Well, why doesn't the magazine fall out? Because the initial run of mag pull magazines or glass-filled nylon, there wasn't enough glass. They weren't hard enough, so they would swell and they would stick in the mag well. So to cover that up,
you flipped it.
You snap it, like, oh, you're doing a chamber check and all. You're not seeing anything when you snap the gun one way and then back again. There's not enough time for you to evaluate anything. And if the gun was operating properly, how did you know to do that other than the energy transfer went to the rear and stopped, which disturbed the firing cycle? So you already knew it was empty and locked to the rear. So they created something to make up for a material failure. So they made a technique change for a material failure and then effectively lied about it. Came up with a reason why. Oh, because you're doing a chamber check. Can you do it at night? No, you can't. Can you even see anything during the day? No. So like that's the operational side of me. I go, I can't do that at night. I can't do that under nods. I can't even see it during the day if I'm trying to, but I already know the answer. The answer is the bolt lock to the rear. Just reload your gun. But the magazine won't come out. Like it was made up and it was insulting to me. I'm like, you jackasses are making stuff up and it looks all cool and snap and pop and everything. And people thought it was the greatest thing ever. They thought it was so cool. Oh, look at these guys because it's all snappy. It's freaking popping and locking with a freaking rifle. And it was just stupid. It was really stupid. But that began the entertainment world. And guys would go out. I've had guys come through my class that said, we shot 2,500 rounds of rifle in 2 days and we only changed the targets. We put up targets in the morning and then we changed them at lunch. Yeah. And that was it. I'm like, it's ballistic masturbation. You're just burning bullets for the sake of making noise and feeling good about yourself. And it's like, there's no performance metrics there. That was the beginning of it. And a bunch of us have spent years trying to undo that, realizing that if you shoot 2,500 rounds in 2 days, unless you have a really disciplined training regimen and you're really working hard, I can do that. But I have a different level of experience and I have very focused goal requirements. There are certain things that I'm working on. Okay, like I shot 400.
Trading versus just shooting.
It is, exactly. One is making noise to feel good about yourself. And I'll pick something out and there are specific requirements, visually. Man, I'm shooting, 2 days ago, I was shooting 2 targets at 40 yards with a no shoot in between my PCC, working on the visual discipline piece and speed and all that. It's based on Matt's CQB warm-up and trying to see how I can learn more from doing it. Like I'm shooting a lot, but I'm pacing every time. I'm getting feedback on each target. Like it's not just I'm not just throwing bullets out there. Every bullet is information that I throw down there and some of it bounces back to me. And when you start doing high round counts for entertainment, what you're doing is reinforcing something a lot. And it's usually bad stuff. Right. It's usually crappy behavior. And now you start packing classes with 28 people. And now there's no way for you to correct people when they're doing it wrong. But the truth is you're really just there to take their money and let them have fun and feel good about themselves and, stroke their beard and pat them on the bum. And I'm like, I'm not that guy. I'm not the feel good guy. Like I love shooting and I want you to learn from it. But the Magpul started, that was a marketing tool that became a business. And then both those guys left and did it on their own. Cause like, shit, I can make more money doing it on my own.
Right. And not being locked down.
Yeah. To this day, you see, at least Travis was in he was a commo guy in reconnaissance. At least he has like that. But you look at, Chris was a Coast Guard guy. And I look at it and go, this is the thing that's insulting to me because you have these people projecting this persona. Okay. It's like, hey dude, we had 20 years of war, 20 years. And you couldn't break off a long weekend to get some? You couldn't stop by, but you're still teaching tactical stuff. We had 2 decades of war, and you didn't stop in for a couple months of it, and yet you still feel compelled to be out there just stop talking about tactics. If you want to talk about shooting, talk about shooting. You don't have the foundation to be teaching these things because you don't understand them. And those are the same people that think that running around with a tennis ball taped to your hand is good training.
Oh God.
It's like, dude, you don't even understand training. And that's what's insulting to me because there's a bunch of people that's coming up on the freaking 19th anniversary of his death. One of my real good friends from the unit, Bobby Horrigan. Guys like Bobby, they don't even know his freaking name. He died really being that guy on an assault, leading an assault to the breach point. And they don't know his name, but they know these other guys that are faking it. He was that guy. He was actually that guy. Came out of the Ranger Regiment, SF, the unit, paid with his life. Nobody knows his name, but they know this guy faking Mr. Tactical. I'm like, it's morally insulting to me. And you're teaching people things that you have no business teaching them because they don't work. You're wasting their time and wasting their money. And money is nothing but a representation of time. So like, stop doing that and not making them better. It's insulting to me.
So I totally get that. And you're not the first person I've talked to, that has that position. And I've also talked to people that were involved with that company and kind of the things that were going on. And then looking back, going, yeah, it was a little wild. There was a lot of stuff going on, but it was just happening so fast and everybody's going on with it. So there's other things that were happening very fast during the time you just mentioned it which was the war was happening.
Yes.
Right. And so there were a lot of people coming back. There were a lot of companies. You mentioned a couple of them.
Yeah.
Triple Canopy. There's Blackwater, obviously. There's a
couple big players.
A couple big ones, right? And so they were because the military couldn't keep up with it fast enough, right? They were contracted. They were doing their thing and training people as fast as they could.
Yes.
They had to give them stuff. They had to give them things. I feel like, I have no idea about this, but I feel from the things that I've heard and the people I've talked to, I feel like that might have been being accelerated as fast as kind of what we were seeing there happen as well. Like they couldn't keep up with it fast enough, whereas these guys were pushing stuff out that they shouldn't have been pushing out.
Yes.
So it's like compounding factors there in my mind. I don't know if I'm right about that.
No, there was a point. There's a point like you'd look at it right around the time of the surge, which would be 06, 07, 08, that time frame, where they just couldn't keep up with training requirements. They literally could. It was just difficult. There were so many people rotating into combat environments. It's why because they had recurrent military contracts. There wasn't enough range space. There's a lot of things going on, and they needed people to be effectively, basically trained well enough to
very
function.
Fast.
Yeah, very fast to function in combat, because that's exactly where you were going.
You're going straight there.
Yeah. It's like, we're going to train you up and you're gone. And so there was a real need to get people through and get them to a baseline level of proficiency to function, and then employ them. And so that was just a requirement. That was something that had to happen. Now you had people that capitalized on it. It's like, oh, that's where it's going. That's where the industry is going. They tried to jump on and they put out their own shingle, and they were effectively presenting very mediocre training. But at the time, anything was better. Was better. The nutritional value was low, but they were.
There you go. That's a really good way of looking at it.
It was, the nutritional value was low, but it's still food.
And it tastes good.
Yeah, and here we go. And so that's where this stuff started to come from. And then it's also the war itself, the wars. Because there were two major wars, and then there was a bunch of fights everywhere in Africa and the Middle East and all that.
Never gets talked about.
That never gets talked about, ever. I mean, Northern Africa, there's, you've got Yemen. I mean, I worked on a project training a bunch of guys on an intelligence activity for the Navy that was going to Yemen back when we used to go to Yemen. Like, there's all kinds of stuff that people have no idea about. But the wars were glamorized, and they began to be glamorized to sell stuff. And that was another thing that drew people in, because if you can sell my stuff, I can support you, I can pay you, I can sponsor you, I can whatever. And so now you look at all of a sudden, there was a big push on AR-based rifles, on M4s and that kind of stuff. And there was lots of rifle training. You go back in 07, 08, there's tons, rifle classes were full. Because people were watching, the Marines, the 82nd, and the Rangers, and SF, and the SEALs, and everybody fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan.
A lot of evolution during that time, too.
Yes.
With regard to the technologies and things.
Yeah, so they're watching all these cool YouTube videos, and wow, I got a rifle just like this SEAL, or I got a rifle just like this Ranger or Green Beret.
Mocking it up to look like the guy. Yeah, exactly. Video games enter the picture here at some point.
Exactly. So now you have a requirement, an actual national requirement. Like, hey, we need to train these people. Now you have people jumping onto that, and you have people marketing. Hey, look at this is the rifle that these guys use, or this is like, to use a buzzword, like the synergistic effect. All of a sudden, there was all this money infused in the firearms and training world.
The movie Navy SEALs comes out during that time.
Yeah, it's crazy. And
cinema went wild. Yeah.
And that's where you start to see the entertainment world really take hold. Because there's a lot of people. I mean, I've had guys come out to courses before when I was in California teaching a rifle course, and I had a friend of mine, Monty, who owns Centurion Arms, his SEAL. He came out and he shot with me. Super solid guy. I forgot which SEAL team he's in. I don't want to give you the wrong SEAL team, but he was a West Coast SEAL. And Monty came out and shoot. Good dude. There were a bunch of coppers in there. There was a thoracic surgeon. Like, I mean, cool on you. Thanks for coming out and donating to the Pannone family. But like, why is a thoracic surgeon? Why are you doing this? Why do you have, a $1,900 rifle? And why are you spending X amount of hundreds of dollars? Yeah, like, I mean, cool, but it's like, do you really, like, truth be told, you should really be spending that money on a handgun and learning how to shoot it and then seeing if you can get an Orange County concealed carry permit. But I'm like, you had these odd software engineers from the Bay Area drive down with, how did guys show up with all Cry precision, like top, bottom, which is $500 right there. Oakley assault boots, which are $200 at the time. A Cry JPC, a jumpable plate carrier, which was $3,000. A Mitch helmet, a 416, which I don't know how he got it. And then HK something with a dot on it. I'm like, you're like the $35,000 man, and you got like $1.17 worth of skill. They're trying to fit in with the cool kid crowd. But it's playing dress up. It's playing dress up. And I look at it, I'm like, I don't mind you for shooting. Come out and shoot. But if you when I go out and shoot, or when all the dudes that I hold in esteem, what do you see? Most of the guys, Matt, Ben, me, Joel Park, Wansik Kim, like all these guys that go out and shoot, what are they usually wearing? They're either wearing a pair of like cool pants or shorts and a t-shirt. Yeah, mostly. Like if you're going to have to take a knee, if you're shooting rifles and you might go into the prone or something, you might wear long pants. Otherwise, wearing shorts and a t-shirt. Why? Because it's comfy, bro. Yeah. Like I don't need to play dress up. And I've had guys ask me why don't you ever wear like, you don't ever wear like Cry, pants or, you don't, I'm like, I'm not hiding from anybody. Like they're hot and they're not really as comfortable as a pair of board shorts. Fair enough. I understand because I'm very practical that way too. And that's the way I think. Like, what am I doing today? And like, is this appropriate? At the same time, look, I want to appreciate it. If you want to play dress up, go play dress up. Yeah. Going back again to what I said before, which was I can see from Mike, I can see the frustration in some of the responses and things when people, whether it's whatever the medium is, when I look at you and I met, we sat down for dinner like a year ago. It's actually almost like a year to the day. It's kind of interesting how this worked out. But I remember walking away from the table going, I think I understand Mike a lot differently than a lot of other people do. Or might. Like, obviously, I just had dinner with the guy. It's not like I've spent a lifetime with him. But then I started listening to things that you were saying maybe a little bit differently and trying to process them differently. And I would say a little bit more objectively might be the thing. And it's not like I was going into whatever you're saying, taking it one way versus another way. I just had a different perspective now. Yeah. And so walking through we didn't have this conversation, but walking through this whole, like, what was the evolution of this? How did it get to where it was at? And so you started by saying there was like a half dozen, 10 guys out there that were doing this. And then all of a sudden there were multiple companies training multiple people that have multiple instructors on staff that are doing this, like from a governmental or other government organization, contract type work. And then there was the equipment companies that jumped into this, and all of a sudden they needed instructors because people want to buy this stuff and there's videos and they want to sign up for classes. And then those instructors left and started their own things. You just mentioned that. And so this thing it was like exponentially grew like cancer. In a sense, like you could look at it that way. Yeah. At the same time, it also encouraged people to get firearms training. It encouraged people to start firearms training companies or start exploring what the quote unquote right way would be to do that. And there was a lot of positive that came out of this. Oh, absolutely. And we have this nation now where you have way more, I would say, armed and trained, some of it good, some of it not so good, right? People than we probably ever had, which then creates like this whole other now market or way to attack the market on how do you keep people interested if now they're kind of like, I recognize it, I need that $600 outfit to go out and shoot my gun. Right? I need to shoot more. And when I do shoot more, I need to make this more training. I don't just need to go burn down targets. There's things I can do. And you're starting to get a little bit more sophisticated. Absolutely. And so I wonder what your take is on that and kind of what you're seeing the shift be and how you're adjusting to this. Again, going all the way back to coming at it from a more of a holistic approach to things. How are you, is it adjusting back to this? Where you kind of started with this and teaching people like it's shooting. Yeah, it absolutely is. And I'll give, I didn't know how to approach it. And I'm more than happy to say that. Like it frustrated me and it's like, it was, throwing shoes at the TV kind of thing. It just really bothered me. And I was looking for a strategy. Like, how do we deal with this? And and like I said, full disclosure, Matt's a good friend of mine, but it's like, to his credit, Matt was like, here's how we deal with it. We just freaking
punch him in the face.
Punch him in the face.
Yeah.
Which is that's Matt. Yeah. That literally that is, but it's like, just punch him in the face and then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Like, and you had to just tell people that, hey, it's like the emperor has no clothes. Your baby's ugly. Sorry. That's just the way it is. And it was what's happened now. There's a lot of guys out there that are actually on board with that are really good shooters. So what's happening now is the market is being realigned in a lot of ways by a loose cabal of people. Okay. Some of it's kind of tight. Like I said, I'm tight with certain guys that I talk to a lot and all, but there's other guys out there that are genuinely good shooters and presenting really good information, and they're starting to get way more credibility. And the hucksters and the one trick wonders that I have this one thing that I do, all of a sudden people are starting to see them for who they are. That said, there is a psychology of social media that is a huge, it's a huge impediment to that. It has to do with the way that you present information. Okay, people want to feel good about themselves, and people present information to get you to feel good about yourself. Okay, now people want to be part of things. Just from the psychology part of it, people want to be part of things that people are already part of.
Sure, they want to be part of the club.
Yeah, so when you start showing classes, routinely showing classes with 28 people in them. Okay. People go, oh wow!
That's where the cool kids are.
It has to be cool. Yeah. All those people go there. It must be really good because so many people go there, as opposed to people that really know how to train. It's for fitness. You run a course. You run a course out here in the gym, and how many people do you want to have?
Yeah, so the maximum amount of people we'll have in a group will be 8 because that's what we feel comfortable in being able to get our hands on during a session.
Yeah, what would happen if you had 28? Session.
It's a free for all.
Yes.
I would have to adjust dramatically to make sure that I maintain the integrity and continuity of what it was I was trying to deliver to them in, say, that hour. And that I wouldn't feel good about it. So I never do that.
It's personnel management. It's body. You're just managing a bunch of bodies. Now you take a class of 28 people. There's no way that you're going to give each person the level of input that they're paying for.
Even with 2 AIs.
It doesn't, because there's logistics. And that's another thing that people don't understand. Having run major, like large courses that are programmed, okay, meaning we shoot a series of tables, table 1 through 5, and then we go to lunch, and then we shoot table 6 through 10. Okay, got it. That's something that is completely programmed. That's on the mill side. That's a 5-to-1 ratio. You have 5, so you have to have 1 instructor for every 5, and that's the max. Okay, so I mean, you're talking about if you had 28 people, basically you rounded up to 30, you would need 6 instructors. You only have 2. What you have is a logistics problem. I have 28 people of unknown capability and proficiency with firearms, and I have to manage them so everybody knows what they're supposed to do, okay, and can somewhat do it safely and still feel like they're getting something out of it. It is literally the least efficient way to teach people. I can do it. I've run classes that are way bigger than they should have been with AIs. But the bottom line is, if I'm the primary instructor, you're paying to see me and to hear me and to be trained by me and to be critiqued by me, not some also ran guy that, no offense to him, but that's not who you paid for. And it's like going, you're going to go to, a concert to see a band. And what you get is another band that's just going to do their songs. Yeah,
it's covering that.
Yeah, we're just covering that. Yeah, you're not really getting the Rolling Stones, but we do a really good impersonation.
And some do better than others. Yeah,
but it's like
never the same.
That's a problem with that. And so you get
there's an authenticity issue.
They're not getting the nutritional density of those classes is not that good. And so you've got, but people look at it who don't know. Okay, they look at it and go, "Wow, look at all those! Look at that class!" And everybody's over there posturing, and everybody's like, "Yeah, look at with the cool guy smile or whatever." I'm like, I know for a fact you can't effectively train people when you have 1 messenger and 28 people that you're supposed to be critiquing. You can't.
Well, I think it's if you think you can, or if you are, it probably speaks to the level of what you're teaching,
or your understanding of how people learn.
Yes, that too.
Like if I think I can train, like I said, I started teaching people. Like I started giving professional classes. Okay, as a mill guy in '93. It was my job. I was teaching, people with a 2nd grade education who are conscripts through an interpreter. There's a lot of learning that had to go on. I started then and worked all the way through, and I realized what you can and can't do. And you can't teach anything at a high level to 28 people.
Is there a point where that happened where you're like, light bulb just went on and you're like,
it was here. It was here in San Jose.
Yeah, talk about that.
I had a friend of mine set up a bunch of courses. He's got a huge freaking email list and all that. And he would bring people in for me. He'd go, hey, when are you going to teach a class? I'd go to teach it and he'd go, I'll fill it. Like, okay. So I was like, okay, 16's a big class for me. I'm like, 16's a lot of people. I'd show up, there'd be 22 people and 2 people who are like comps. So now I've got 24 people in a class and I'm like running around like a one-armed dude at a paper hanging contest. And I'm just trying to keep people from doing silly stuff and keep track. It's overwhelming. And the message gets watered down dramatically because it's based on the numbers. How much do you get of my attention when there's 24 people there versus when there's 12 or 16? Well, guess what? It's basically half as much at best. And it's not even a direct correlation. You get a quarter as much, not a half as much, because it just degrades and now it becomes a logistics thing. I'm just trying to make sure everybody knows what they're supposed to do and can do it at a baseline level and is safe.
Yeah, it's inverse proportions to logistics.
Yep.
An increase in logistics issues equals a decrease in quality control.
Absolutely.
They're inversely, was that disproportionate or whatever?
And I laugh. I've said that before and I've had people go, well, maybe just because you can't run a big class. It's like, bro, I was running 50 people with a second grade education who are conscripts with machine guns through an interpreter. Stop telling me what I don't know how to do. Like, stop telling me what I don't know. Like, I'd be interested to see who's out there. And I'm not saying there's not. But there's only probably 2, maybe 3 of us that have as much time running ranges under the varying conditions that I've run them under. It's like, I'd be hard pressed to find it. So everything you can do wrong, I've done it wrong. I know what doesn't work and I know why. And it is reps. And it's like, I've got a ton of podium time. I know what it takes for people to learn under that environment. And if you don't have an instructor cadre that has continuity in the message, first of all, and is large enough to support it, you can't do it. But people are doing that now because they can, because social media
says it's okay.
It says it's okay and it's cool. Look at all these people. Everybody, we had 28 people over here. You also get people that go, they're going for a personal experience. They're going because they like the camaraderie or whatever. Okay, fine. I'm not that guy. Like, I don't idolize any other human being. I respect people that have done good stuff, and I do. I have admiration for that. But nobody's my hero. Like, that's not how it works for me. But some people want that, and also the patches and the coins and the hats and all that shit. I'm not a monkey dancing for trinkets from you. I'm here to learn something. I don't want your trinkets. I'm not interested in that. And some people, they like it because look what I got, look what I earned. I'm like, I'm a different guy.
Yeah, yes. There's validation. There's instant gratification. There's also the look at me factor. Yeah. This looks good on social. There's marketing to this. I get all that stuff too. But I'm with you. It's interesting because I've taken so many classes and a lot of these courses from over the last several years. But the point of this is, like, I go, and a lot of times I'll go, there'll be the same sort of group of people there. And I've just never been in, like, I like the competition piece, at the end, or if they're doing something like, because we're putting all the things together. Let's test this out a little bit. Yeah. But, walking away with coins and patches wasn't anything I ever, I get why people are doing it, but it's nothing, it never drew me to something. Like, I see people that are practicing drills to then go take a guy's class. Yeah. To wait till the end of the class to do the drill, or maybe it's at the beginning because it's the cold standard or whatever else. And that's why they went to the class versus, is there anything else of value that I can draw from here? And I'm not saying that they didn't. I'm just saying, for me, that was never the purpose. So I think I can relate to this.
Yeah, if you go to a class, the same exact class, 3 or 4 or 5 times, okay? Then let's just step back and go, what are you not getting that you have to come back 5 times?
That's a very good question.
You're paying full price for, but what is it that you're going back there to get again? Otherwise you're paying, $600+ for a swing at a freaking trinket. Like,
right.
That's 3 cases of ammo. That's 3,000 rounds of ammo if you shop around. You're going to get way more out of that than you'll ever get out of somebody's trinket. And what you're doing is you're saying, you're the kingmaker. You tell me if I'm good or not. Screw that. I'm not interested in that. I'll know if I'm good or not when I step on the field and I compete and I do well. Then I'll know. And if not, your trinket doesn't help me. And it dirties up the training space because the emphasis is now on earning a trinket, not on being better.
That's an interesting take. And I don't know if I fully agree with that, but I don't disagree with it either because, again, I always kind of look at this objectively and go, hey, if this is what kind of draws somebody in to become interested, and then this starts their journey for them, then that's a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I would also agree that if this is the thing that they think this should be, that becomes problematic, and it does dirty the space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think ultimately it dirties the space for the instructor or the coach who's trying to do this thing and trying to understand, how do I do this and be successful? And if the concentration is I have to have these contests and these coins and things like that, versus like, how do I really refine my curriculum? And then once I've proven that out and that it works, right? And then I can take person from point A to point D in that first class that they take. And then they can go, when they come back, they're at D. There still should be a D because I've given them some things to practice to maintain. It's just like, again, I relate this to the fitness floor. They learn how to train so they can get that and maybe even a little bit better. So that now the next time I can take them from E to P, or whatever else. It's a long way to kind of get to the end, which is hopefully what you're doing is you're giving somebody something that they can take with them to then build upon. They've made an investment and they can get some type of a return on that investment over time. And you were making like the ammo comparison. Like put your money not in the next $600, not into a class, put it into some ammo and some range time, right? Using the skills or whatever that you learned. And if you want to have fun with it, there's nothing wrong with having fun. And so that's a whole other piece to the coin thing. I get it. It brings people together. There's a camaraderie thing there.
Here's the thing: when you build your course around your standards to get people in, it becomes a marketing tool.
That's I think where I was going with this, but that's a short way of getting there.
I mean, that to me, that's the thing. I want you to be able to apply marksmanship in a dynamic environment extremely well. The only way that you can do whatever your standards are is to have a completely canned environment where you know exactly what the standards are, you know exactly what the shooting is, all of it.
Game it.
Yeah. And it's overwhelmingly either static or very linear. I'm either moving straight forward or moving backwards straight. There's very little movement. There's very little. It's like when I see people that do that and then I see the same people go compete, I'm like, you don't look the same when you actually compete in a match. You don't move the same way. You don't have the same level of accuracy and speed, none of that. So your marksmanship in isolation is far better than your marksmanship in application. And I only care about the second part. I don't care about isolated marksmanship. I don't care about your one-shot draw. I care about how you shoot on 5 stages or 6 stages at a match. That's what I care about. That's what I care about for myself, for my own training. I don't give a damn about, static warp speed, a draw. I really don't care about it. What I care about is, does it degrade my performance at a match? Am I fast enough so that it is no longer a factor? So my draw speed is not a factor. And then once I take that one shot out of an entire stage of 28 rounds, what did I do for the other 27? Like, how did I do on the other 27 rounds? Are my splits good? Are my transitions good? Is my movement and setup good? There's so much more to shooting. But when you take it in isolation, you're doing one-dimensional training, and all the rest of it is left on the side of the road. And when you have to perform, and the only way that you're going to have to perform outside of a combative engagement is sports shooting, you can't do it.
This is where it gets fuzzy and weird in that when you are talking about shooting in isolation and shooting for a drill, gaming drill, whatever, versus competition, you mentioned like the practical piece of this, and the majority of the folks that you're training, which are in law enforcement, this is a very real thing, because oftentimes I think where it's got really cloudy is you have the guy that's teaching that very linear thing. Maybe it's for a coin or whatever. Set that aside. But then it's also talking about gunfighting. I know. I'm not trying to poke the bear here.
No,
this is something that I recognized early on as a problem. Like, but hold on a second.
Gunfighting is the whole idea to use that. It sexies it up. That is it. That is an event where you apply skills. We are working on the component skills. Don't compare it to anything, especially don't compare it to things that you've never done, that you've never experienced, because there is a combative engagement is an emotional event with a technical solution. That's what it is. There's a lot of...
Wait, say that again?
It's an emotional event with a technical solution. And when I say an emotional event, I mean, there's all kinds of... There's fear, anxiety, adrenaline. That's what I mean emotional. I don't mean it in a positive or negative way. It's just there is a level of fear and urgency that you can't replicate.
Yes. Internally.
And so, but winning it is a technical solution. You are applying kinetic energy to something that is dangerous to you until it's no longer dangerous to you. It is a mathematical solution with a bunch of angles, okay? But the idea that you understand that, never having participated it in any level or even participated in it at an ancillary level where you watched it happen, stop talking about that. Just stop it. Just shoot really good, and then people will apply it as they see fit. But the idea that you bring that up, it sexies it up. Everybody's like, gunfighter course. It's not a gunfighter course. It's a shooting course.
So is there a way to talk about it, again, without giving a specific scenario? And the reason you want to know this is because when this happens, you'll be able to do this with it. Is there a way to talk about somehow the application between, and maybe this is another way of looking at it, like BJJ to a street fight? Well, street fighting is not BJJ, right? And BJJ isn't a street fight, but there are things that you can take along with it. And I'm not going to teach you how to street fight today, but we're going to do this. And this might apply at this and this. Is there a way to do this well? I'm asking.
If you look into BJJ, it's like for me, coming from a wrestling background and then doing BJJ, like my body awareness, I know when I'm off balance. I know when I'm getting you off balance. I know where your exposure is. I know how to isolate an arm. I know what that means. I know even though I isolate another arm, there's still, I've got one arm. You still have another arm to play with. Like if you can access a tool, you can. You start looking at it differently based on your experience level. And you start to see that when you apply it, you apply BJJ in a fighting environment, which we were just, my good friend Craig Douglas from South Narc, he was running a course in Utah and we went up and took Vetty up to say hi and stuff. That's a perfect example of now you're applying BJJ and you have they're dummy edged weapons, but you've got knives, you've got, sim guns.
Sure.
Now you're saying, okay, what part of this applies to that? Now you're integrating the two, and it's a different thing. It's not all BJJ and it's not all shooting. Right. It's this where it works. It's BJJ when BJJ takes preeminence. Like I need to be able to isolate that arm. Okay. And on the other side, it's like, I really need to access a pistol or a knife and know how to use it. But it is that the focus isn't one or the other. It's both in the proper balance. And I think that's something that's hard for people that have never experienced real fighting understand, that it's not always boxing. It's not always BJJ. It's everything at the appropriate time. And that is a hard concept for people to understand unless they've actually fought. And I think it's difficult. I know that Craig has done a good job with it. Mm. And I know that on the other side, guys that are in my little circle that are, I consider my little peer group, the shooting's just the shooting. Be really good at it. Yeah. You'll figure out how to apply it on the, based on what's there. If you're emotionally capable of it, if you're not emotionally capable of fighting, then you're just melt. It's just a different game. That's a whole different problem. But I want your skills refined so well that you understand how to manipulate intuitively this tool and make it do what you want it to do. You go, this tool should put 2 of these over there, and it just happens, as opposed to trying to remember stuff. And so I think that's where you start there. And there are things that you understand, again, the emotional nature. Like I said, it's an emotional event with a technical solution because of the fear involved in it and because of the jeopardy involved in it. And the people that have never participated in that don't realize that when I say it's an emotional event with a technical solution, where's my emphasis? It's on the technical piece. I want to be so good technically that even if I'm somewhat degraded, even if I'm revved up and I'm full of freaking adrenaline and cortisol and whatever other weird shit your body wants to throw in there,
I can still better than the other guy.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's something that when you realize it is not a one-dimensional thing, but I'm pulling one component out of it, the shooting piece. For this, and going, we are going to refine this at such a level that even under extreme stress, physically and emotionally, if this gun can be brought to bear, you can do it. To me, it's literally that simple. But you don't have to sexy that up.
Yeah, I just had an interview with this guy John Valentine, and he's in the combative side of things. Mm-hmm. So we had this huge conversation around BJJ. John's a really great guy, super intelligent. I feel fortunate to have come across him and been introduced to him by some other guys. But the point of that is he made mention of martial arts and doing martial arts versus using martial arts. Like if you're training this linearly, mm-hmm. like you pick one thing, whatever it is, whether it's BJJ or Kenpo, whatever it is that you're doing. If you're doing this thing as the means to then do the thing, mm-hmm. you're going to find the limits of that thing really fast once you're in doing the thing versus I train all these different things, all these different components. Maybe it's, it's BJJ, it's Taekwondo, it's boxing, it's grappling, it's whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm using the martial arts versus doing the martial arts. So I'm taking all the stuff.
Application of skills.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I wonder, like, if what your thoughts are on this. Is it getting better? Are people starting to wake up to this a little bit with all the conversations that have happened and the things that are out there and people stepping in? I would say in a lot of cases, they're just stepping in a steaming pile of shit to have to back themselves out of it. And some of that's been public and all these things and all these different mediums. Is it getting better?
Yeah, it's getting better at a frustratingly slow pace
because they're moving way slower than how we got here. Yeah,
okay. It should be blatantly obvious, but it's not. It is what's happening is the narrative has been hijacked.
Okay,
and people have been exposed for who they are, for what they're selling. Like, this doesn't work, and this is why. You can't just say this doesn't work because he's an asshole. You can't say that. You say this doesn't work, and I can tell you exactly why.
Well, a lot of people say that, though. That's a big problem.
And those people have no credibility. Yeah. If you just say it doesn't work because I don't like him, and
it's a big problem.
It's a huge problem. When I critique stuff, I critique it based on the flaws that I see, and I can articulate it. This is a flaw for the following reasons, and this is what it lends to. This is why you can't do it. I'll break it down. The vehicle space is one that it's been huge. The whole idea of fighting from the front seat and the counter ambush stuff. No, an ambush is a sucker punch with a gun. You don't get to counter it. You get to survive it. That's all. You don't counter a sucker punch. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a sucker punch. Like,
you saw it coming.
Yeah, if you saw it coming, it's not a sucker punch. But if you get sucker punched, all the best you can hope for is that you don't get knocked out. And if you get stunned and you get dropped to your knees, you got about a second to a second and a half to get to your feet, or you're going to get finished in the corner of the freaking bar at O'Loughlin's.
Whatever.
You're not going to get out of that. It doesn't work like that. And people that have never been there, I say that because that's a specific place and thing that happened to me. I got hit really hard, and it was hard enough to drop me to my knees, but not hard enough to put me out. And I remember in the corner of the bar at O'Loughlin's going, if I don't get to my feet in about a second, he will bury me right here, and I'll wake up outside on the freaking concrete with the bouncers. Like, that's the truth of it. You just survive it and hope you can get to your feet. If you don't get to your feet, and that's movement, you get buried right there. That's the way it works. That's fighting, man. I'm sorry, but it's like, and when people explain things to others, well, you can counter this and you can do that. You can shift your body and you can return, you can identify the threat.
Making a lot of assumptions.
There's all kinds of assumptions. The one assumption that you're not making is there's bullets coming through the windshield. Like, and Pat and I, when we teach the course, like, we look at time as rounds per second you're receiving. 1 second at 25 splits, which is not really fast, is 4 rounds per second. The start signal is boom. So that's your 5th round. So in the first second, you just took 5 rounds. 1,000. That was 5 rounds. Like, start thinking about it mathematically. Take your personal experience out of it in that sense. Okay, whatever you think or don't think or experience, whatever. Say, just look at it mathematically. Okay? In 2 seconds, 1,000, 2,000, 9 bullets just came through the windshield. Do you think you can even identify where it's coming from in that time frame? No. Are you going to? No. You're just going to try and get out of the way of the bullets.
This is practical.
That's just human nature. I'm in jeopardy from something out there that's coming through here, and I have to get out of the way. I have to find some place to hide long enough to do some of that pilot shit, Mav, like to figure it out. Otherwise, you're kidding yourself if you think you're going to do all this flamboyant stuff. And you can only really do that because you don't know. Like, you're saying, I can do this. No, you can't. You just can't. And there's no provable way. There's no instance of that's happened that people can document and go, this actually happened and it worked. And so that's why when I see stuff like that, back to the whole training space and the marketing piece, and you start looking at people with flashy marketing selling trash, okay? And I was telling Vetty about it. It's like the Thigh Master. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
How many does she sell? She sold a gazillion of those, right? Right? How many people use those?
I have no idea.
No, but you know what? But, she sold 1 million of those. And people are, it's got to be good. They bought it. They used it for 2 minutes. Go, this sucks.
Right.
Or they went use it for 2 minutes and then never used it again. But the bottom line is people used it because of the marketing pitch. Yeah. That's why. It was sold well. It's useless, but it was sold well. And so it's like there's a lot of that in the training space especially for tactics, because shooting is very quantifiable. There's stuff you can and can't do, and you can look at a target and a timer and go, that's it.
I think people are learning that. There's a lot more people have shot timers than have ever had shot timers before. Yep. And
it is really called the herd on the shooting side. But on the tactics side, you still have people talking about footwork and CQB. Like, dude, can you walk?
Right.
Then stop it. Like, and then the whole, like, how do you open a door? I don't know. How do you usually open a door? Like, I mean, pull and hold, push and go. Like, it's kind of simple. People try to make things very complex to sound smart. And it's truthfully, things are not that complex. Being simple and being easy are two very different things.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, simplicity doesn't necessarily make it easy. It just makes it easy to understand.
Yeah, and articulate.
Yes,
yeah.
But in application, it's very difficult. And I think that's
getting lost.
It's getting lost completely. That's why, like, the tagline for the company, the magic is there's no magic. There's no fancy, ornate, magical, secret stuff. It's just simple things done exceptionally well at a high level of proficiency and then applied in a dynamic environment. And there's a lot of people that are like, that's where they're selling magic. I've got the secret way. I've got the hack. Stop it. Just stop. There's no, the life hack to me is a way to avoid the work. And that doesn't ever turn out well. That doesn't ever turn out in repeatable performance under pressure.
Yeah, this goes back to, I think you just mentioned it, but like majoring in the minors. Like, there's 90% of what you need to do are fundamentals. Right? And then there's this 10%. And yes, you can get things through, maybe you can make up some of those percentage points. Even if it's like a 0.5%. In the fitness world, it's supplements, right? It's gear. It's whatever. It's PEDs. Like in the firearm side of things, it's triggers, it's
exactly
optics, it's
spot on.
It's those kind of things. And that's where so much of the focus goes when in that 10% margin. Yeah, because that's where the money is. There's a huge return there's a huge profit margin in those little things. That's what, again, going back, it sort of frustrated me when I was looking at it and going, this sounds really weird. And it kind of looks really similar to me. Like, I've been in this thing and I watched these people, they said this stuff and they sold a lot of things, and it pissed me off because I'm like, they're selling garbage. That's snake oil. That's bullshit. I know that product. I know the person behind that product. That's shitty. And I was angry for a long time. In fact, I was off. I didn't get into the social media game and the fitness business until late in the game when I expanded the business. I'm like, fuck, we just tripled in size in terms of square footage. I got to put butts in the seats. Like, I need to do some things. But when I did do that, this is way before the podcast. It's like, I don't want to put anything out that a coach won't look at and go, that's smart. Yep. And that at the same time, a potential new client or my audience or who I was trying to build couldn't look at it and understand. But at the same time, I'm also not trying to dumb it down to the point where where people have the wrong perception or conception of what it is we're trying to put out there. Because, to your point, there may be some complexity to it, but it's not complicated. And I am not trying to overcomplicate this by using big words and word salad and all those kind of things. And by the way, I only have 15 seconds to give you this message because your attention span, it's less than that now.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and it was very hard for me. It still is. It still is very hard for me. I think I'm better at it just through practice, but it created a lot of anxiety for me. And there were times where I tried to outsource this stuff. Like, I'm just having I don't know how to do this well. I had to learn it. And then over time, I was like, no, I don't think there's another way to do this. I see other people doing things a certain way. And maybe they're seemingly successful and they're not, or I kind of like the way that looks and sounds. And if I could do my message like that person is presenting it, only with my words, this could be, maybe I could make this work. So go back to like the vehicle thing for just a second. I've seen a lot less of that in the last year, like being portrayed on like the social media stuff than the previous years. I mean, that thing was people were selling a lot of vehicle classes, and they still exist. But I think that message is getting out there.
It's absolutely getting out.
I think it's good. So that was my question about, like, is it getting better? And I think what I heard you say there, number one, I've heard you say it before lots of times in a different way, not word for word. So you're not the only person. I think other people have listened to this, and other people feel and think and say the same thing. You have maybe a little bit different platform to mountaintop to speak from because of your experience and where you are in the industry and the people in the circles that you run with. But I think other people are getting it, and they just maybe don't know how to articulate it the way you have because they haven't had the reps or the experience to articulate. I know what I'm seeing is a little weird. So just because I'm not talking about it doesn't mean I don't understand it. I've just decided I'm not going to talk about it. That's another thing in terms of the audience and the messaging that they're getting in them trying to sift through all of this stuff. So I think it's getting better. I mean, I know it's getting better.
It is.
I know it's getting better.
It can't, because there was no competing message and now there is.
Yes.
So it has to get better. It's just a matter of how much it gets better. Also, here's something too that we haven't kind of touched on, but is important, is you get social media personalities where people are more connected emotionally to the messenger and not the message. And so they feel that their secret sensei has to be defended. And I don't know if you've seen it, but I've had people come back and make comments. I'm like, I'm literally, it's like the physics professor at Stanford arguing with a high school physics student.
Yeah, what are you doing, man?
You're not even in the league to talk about this. You don't know. And that devolves into, you're just jealous because he's cashing checks or whatever kind of crap like that. I'm like, dude, like I said, I don't count other people's money because at the end of the day, it's still their money. Like, I don't care. Like, it doesn't change. And so but you have people that have that. You have the fanboy attacks, which have gotten those. I used to just delete the comments. Now I engage them and just mess with them because they can't. I just get professorial. Yeah, I just go, oh, actually, no, that's not correct for the following reason. No, oh, you just said, like, so your comment is he makes more money than me, or you believe he does, and like whatever. There's that. There's also a component of people that don't want to go, I went to this guy's class and I thought it sucked. Yeah. They don't want to be the guy that says that. And it's like,
that's what I mean about the being quiet.
Yeah. They know it's not good. And I have a couple friends. I have a friend in the LE community, who's a multi-division, GM shooter. And he works at the range and armory side for a major police department in the West. I'm going to leave his name out of it. He went to a really well-known course and he was like, we spent the first 4 hours watching this guy hawk his wares and talk about grip. He's like, we spent 4 hours talking about grip. Like, maybe we should actually just go do it. Like, just go shoot. Like, shoot and talk while you're shooting.
Do the thing.
Do the thing. But to spend 4 hours in a classroom talking about grip, there's not that much to talk about.
Yeah.
But it's like,
so I mean, you're overcomplicating.
Yeah, it's like it's an opportunity it's an opportunity to sell stuff. It's an opportunity to, I've got this, and here's a cost code for this, and here's a cost code for that, and you can get this, and you can buy that, and we got shirts and stickers and patches, and it's like,
this is the buyer beware part.
Yes, and I'm like, if I am selling you stuff, that's why I don't sell stuff at classes. I used to have shirts and hats and patches and all kinds of cool stuff and all that. I just stopped. Hey, if you want to come train with me. I'm not, it used to be years ago, a long time ago.
Upsell.
Yeah, a long time ago, you got a shirt, a certificate, and a patch. Everybody did. And there were people that came just for that. They literally came to get a shirt and a patch. That was it.
I just kind of mentioned that before because that's what I was seeing too. And again, if there's a standard somewhere connected to this, they would practice for weeks, months. People will post about this. Like, I'm going back for my 4th time to so-and-so's class and I'm going to earn that coin or that whatever
patch
it is.
Or whatever it is, or hat.
I'm like, what? Okay, all right. Look, dude, if that floats your boat, like you said, I'm not counting your money. It's your own money.
Yeah,
like you do your own thing. But to me, that was a little weird. It's
especially when you look at some of the standards, and they're challenging, no doubt. I mean, if you practice them, they're moderately challenging at best. But that's how you get there. But think about it. I'm gonna go to a class. I'm gonna pay $650 to take a swing at that once, maybe twice. So if it's a cold standard, I got to shoot it. I get to shoot it once each day. I don't know. I don't know how those people run that. But let's say you're paying $325 at the fair to see if you can get the little crane to pick up the stuffed animal you want. I don't know. It's like think about that. Your chance. Okay, hey, I want to try to shoot your standards. What does it cost? $325 a shot. That's basically what you're saying, because the rest of it, you're not really there for that. You're there to shoot somebody's standards and try and get a patch.
That's the math problem.
They're going, no, I'm there for the training and stuff. No, you're not. If you go there 4 times, you're there for the patch. Just say it. I don't care. It's cool. It's like cool. It's right. I don't care that you cut your own trail, but don't lie to me. It's like, it's like, it's one of those things. It's like, just be honest about what you're there for. And I think people don't want to do that because they don't want to identify themselves as that guy. I'm trying to get a patch. I'm trying to get a coin. I don't care. What do I want? I want skills that are going to support me to be, a national champion. Whether I am or I am not ever, doesn't matter. That's what I want.
That's what I'm working
towards. I'm working towards a national level of proficiency. And if that only translates into being in the top 10 at the nationals or the top 25 at the nationals, It's still pretty damn good, but that's what I'm going for. And a patch isn't going to do that, or a coin, or a hat, or a badge, or a pair of freaking secret underwear, or whatever. It's not going to do that. Like hard work when nobody's watching, and investigating and exploratory training and doing stuff that outside of at the fringes of control of your gun, and figuring out what do I see? What do I need to see? What don't I need to see that I'm looking at? All that stuff. That on the shooting side, that's stuff that's work. That's work that's off the camera. That's work that nobody knows about that you do. And then on the tactics side, I know what I know, and I know why. And I know why it works and why it doesn't work. And if I don't, I will stay out of that lane. I don't do certain things because I don't believe that my experience will cross over into that application on the law enforcement side. But when it comes to just the fighting part, I understand that. And that's why the vehicle class, we just did one, really, really well received down in Texas. They want us to come back. There are people that are interested in some federal agencies to bring us out, because it's very practical and it applies. And I can explain why we do each of the things we do and how it works. I don't have to tell you a war story. I don't have to tell you there I was. I can say this works for the following reasons. And then they apply it using simunitions against a dynamic adversary, and they go, wow, I knew what they were trying to do and I couldn't stop them. That's the win. But it's in application. It's tactics in application, not in isolation. It's marksmanship in application, not in isolation. You can isolate anything and be good at it. Applying things is what's hard. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people that teach things in isolation because they can look really good without all the supporting skills.
Yeah, so as this thing evolves, and you just mentioned, like, so you have this vehicle. This is not new. You've been doing this. Yeah, you guys have been doing this for a long time. But the evolution of sort of CTT Solutions, and I mean, Mike, we've already talked about your history and all the things you've done, and kind of where you started and where we are now, or where you are now. I think one of the challenges that a lot of the instructors, this is just in general, if you're an instructor or a coach, there's this challenge of scaling yourself, right? And being able to do it for a long time. We had a good conversation about this last night about you're at a point where you can pick the classes, be where you want to be versus being where you have to be to pay the bills. Yeah, to pay the bill. That's a really good way of looking at it. Yeah, you're not starving. So because you put in the work, over the time, and it took a long time to get there. Probably times where it wasn't so great, right? So there was some suffering. My point of this is I think there's what you're seeing there are instructors that have now, maybe a few years ago, they were saying things and doing things like, that's a little questionable, it's a little weird, they're reaching a little bit, they're thirsty, and now they're kind of refining things, and they're going through this process that everybody has to go through, same as going through your shooting process, right? Or through the training process. Like you just have to go through this. And so I see it getting better in a lot of ways. And I think there's less of these newcomers coming in trying to be famous so fast, probably because it's a little bit more saturated now. It's maybe a little tougher. There's a lot more noise. There's a lot more noise. And I think you have, as a result of all the things we've talked about, I think you have a little bit more of, you have a more informed consumer. Yes. And the level of informed obviously is very relative. I think you have a well-informed consumer. So the question in this is, where do you see this thing evolving? I want to talk specifically as an industry, or generally as an industry, but specifically as for you as the coach or as the guy behind CTT Solutions. Where does this thing continue to go? So let's answer to the industry thing first. Like, what are your predictions? I think the industry is going to get more refined. We've gone through an aberrant period where it's been marketing. There are marketing companies masquerading as firearms or tactics companies, but there's no really quantifiable underlying experience and skill. So that is beginning it's getting culled, and I see it on the vehicle side. We're not selling entertainment. We're not taping tennis balls to your hands and squirting fake blood on you. We're not teaching rifle malfunctions in a tactics class. Those are component skills that you should already know. What we're teaching is quantifiable, repeatable skills that are vetted throughout 20 years of warfare and other law enforcement engagements. Now we're teaching you how to do those and why it works. That's something that's very different. The level of instruction, selling smoke and magic beans, is getting harder and harder to do now because you have a more informed consumer. And the standards that you've got guys that people didn't know about before. I know it's first. I'm pretty sure it's Smith, but Mark Smith from JBS. Yeah, Mark. Yeah, Mark. Dude, he's a solid cat, man. Super nice guy. Working really hard. Yeah, working hard, putting out great information. It's like guys like that.
dude, the more the merrier. They make all of us better. He's, like I said, not only is he a good dude, he's really good at what he does, and he gives a damn.
Yep.
He's not trying to get his hands in your pockets two at a time. And those are the guys that they are going to do really well in the industry. And it's the wheat from the chaff. Like the other ones are just going to go away, because now in industry that's saturated with as much talent that's starting to come in, guys like that, it's going to be harder and harder to compete if you don't have that level of skill. If you're not doing the time, if you're not training on your own really hard, if you're going from class to class to class to class to class, and if you say, oh, my classes are my training time, no, they're not. That's instruction time. Your training time is when you are on the range by yourself, investing in your skills with bullets and time. If you're not doing that, if you're not going to the range, basically, and you're an instructor for firearms, if you're not going to the range nearly every day that you're off the road and you're not shooting competitions, then you are not applying, you're not refining and applying your craft. And I'm sorry, you're going to fall by the wayside eventually. You're just going to get outperformed at a level that you can't recover from. So it's like it is changing in a good way. Like I said, the first one that came to mind, because I was just watching some of his stuff, was Mark. But like I said, I've seen him up in Utah a couple times when he's teaching. Just a damn nice guy, but really, really good. A guy like that. And then you've got like I said, the guy Matt Pranka and Ben and Joel and Juansik. And there's people out there at a super high level now that the bar is high. And it wasn't that way before. And now it's being identified because, somebody like Matt, the redneck friggin' lives, he's not afraid to go, this is what the standard is now. What you thought the standard wasn't the standard. That was you getting over. Now we're playing with the big kids, and you got to freaking perform. And it's getting better, and it's going to get better. It's going to put some people out of a job, though. It's because the consumer base is the same size. It's growing a little bit, but it's generally the same size.
It's not actually. When you look at the entirety of how many people own firearms, how many people actually train, and then how many people actually pay for training, it's not that big. So you have to be very careful.
Exactly. And so that's good. That will grow a little bit because so many more people are buying guns. But that also said that people that are buying guns are at the entry level. There's a lot of people, especially in California, first-time gun buyers because of crime issues and all that. But overall, the pie is not getting that much bigger, but a lot more talented people are coming into it. And it's like,
you have to step up your game.
You got to step up your game, or you're going to they're hiring at Home Depot. Like it is. And that's why all of it, fitness, shooting, everything. People have an expectation when you step on the range that you will perform a certain way. And truth be told, you'll look a certain way. Mm-hmm. And when you step out there and you don't perform nor look that way, they're like, why did I just spend this money?
Well, I think the judgment call on that is shifting, right? Because they're seeing another version. Yep. And they're also getting a different flavor. Mm-hmm. For a long time, again, there's many of these instructors out there, but it's awesome that you brought up Mark. I really like Mark for all the same reasons, mostly because he's just a really good human being. Yeah. And one of the other reasons I really like him and why I was drawn to him is because of his ability to connect with his audience. And that audience has grown dramatically because I think people are like, I didn't recognize there's a guy like Mark out there. So there's a little bit of a different flavor. I mean, you mentioned a lot of, and you're not going to be everybody's flavor, Mike. I know you know that, and I know you don't get hurt feelings by me saying that. Same with me. Like, I get it. So to have guys like that and then have guys like you or others support one another in that way, I think that's another huge shift that I see happening is that talent, that passion, that hard work, that work ethic being recognized and being propped up as a good thing, as admirable, as this is what you should be looking for. Not because it's a boys club. No. Not because it's the club within the club. And I think initially it kind of started like that. Like, if you're not in this group, like, I think that's where people, when I say start, I think that's where people kind of looked at it. If you're not in this group, then you're going to be ostracized and, you're just no good. So I'm scared of those guys. I don't want to deal with those guys because if you're in, it's fine. If you're not, you're not.
It's a click.
Exactly. That I think is changing too. People are starting to recognize, hold on, this dude over here who I like so much is kind of saying the same shit this guy is, and they're kind of supporting one another to the extent where you see them out there in the range shooting together now. That's a huge shift.
It's you look at some of the allegiances that used to be almost cliquish. There was an LE side, right? Yep. And then there was a mill side. Yep. And then there was a sports shooter side.
And you weren't crossing over.
Yeah, you were in your camp. Now look at like the circles, the people that I like. Past my partner from Long Beach. He's a Long Beach SWAT guy for like 18 years. He's been a copper there for, I don't know, 24 years, was an infantryman in the Marine Corps for 6 years, like done a lot of stuff. Chris Palmer, you know Chris, super great guy, tremendous amount of experience, incredibly like humble, intelligent guy that just no BS guy. And then you got Matt, obviously from the same general. I mean, we had a lot of the same. He was a Navy guy, but I was an Army guy in reconnaissance. We both went to SF. We both went to. We have a lot of parallels. Super solid guy with tons of experience. Ben, just a sports shooter. You know, ton of experience, ton of incredible like insight about shooting. All these people we're all friends. We all bounce stuff off of each other. We even we got guys that do long range stuff. Buck Doyle or Joe Dawson or stuff. There's people we talk about with them that are doing a completely different weapon system. But if you look at like Buck and you look at Joe shooting doubles Buck had me shooting doubles at 485 yards on a 12x16 plate in like 10 minutes.
They understand shooting.
They understand shooting. I'm shooting 20 splits at almost 5 football fields away. And it's like, these are guys who now we're pulling into this, everybody from all the different places. Why? Because Buck was a recon guy and a MARSOC guy, or because Joe was a SEAL? No, because everybody shoots good. And Mark's in that club, and Ben's in that club. Like all these people, we're looking at people that actually perform. I don't care who you used to be in another life. If we're at Chili's, drinking beers, eating wings, fine, you could tell me your story. That's great. This is about performance. And that's the part that stop selling who you were in another life.
Yep.
Okay? I mean, I would like to believe I had a pretty cool life, but the bottom line is what matters is what I can do on the range with you today. If I can't perform, it doesn't matter my little fantasy story about myself. Nobody cares.
So I think what you said there about that is really important. We've been hearing that for a long time. You know, to stop trying to hang your success now on your resume from the past or whatever. And I think what you said there just kind of proves it out by some of the names you dropped. You know, when you start looking at like Mark as the example, because he was the one. There's others that I've seen you guys. Sorry, not you guys. You specifically working with them and propping them up and having conversations with that basically proves that point that you are not keeping a small, tight circle of only your boys that only did what you did or similar to what you did, that there's plenty of room for the guy that wants to work hard, that wants to give good information, that wants to make a connection with his customer base. And there's a whole other part to this, which is that's also a smart business person. Yeah. And again, I'll go back to what I said about Mark. He's a really good dude. Same thing you said about Chris with all the other compliments that you gave him. Same thing. And that these are good humans that are actually being very, very calculated about who they let into their circle, who they do talk, about without trying to directly insult them, but to be very upfront about it, as well as bring people in. Yeah. So that's the thing. It isn't firing shots across the bow all the time. And if you pay attention, what you're seeing is, and this is what I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning of this thing with my journey. Like, I saw this was going to have to be an evolution. It's the same shit that happened in the fitness industry. And again, I keep paralleling it. People are probably bored with that. But I can go back and go.
It's good though. It's useful because
I told you so.
Yeah, it's useful because people act the same way when you throw egos and money into something. They act the same way. And it's like.
And so what you're seeing is there's a little bit of that cream that's kind of rising to the top. And that other cream is not afraid of that cream. It's fine. It just makes us richer.
Exactly.
At the end of the day.
And there's countless. I mean, like I said, the names, you've got Joel Park, Kwanzaa Kim. You've got people out there that are not mill guys that are great shooters, that teach really well, that have a lot of insight. They're more than, well, nobody's like, oh, you weren't this guy, or you weren't that guy, you weren't a SWAT guy, you weren't a commando, you weren't a frogman. Nobody gives a damn. It's like, bro, you're a good shooter. And you got great ideas. That's what's important. And that's that people will try to hang that canard. Oh, they just don't like him because he's not he wasn't a Green Beret, or he wasn't a SEAL, or he wasn't this. No, I don't, it's not that I don't like you. I don't know you well enough to not like you. I think what you teach is not good. It's not good. And I can tell you why. And I can tell you a better way to do it. And that's where people, they personalize their lack of proficiency. Yeah. You just don't like me because I'm this guy. No, I don't like you because you're not good at this.
Or they've created a false ceiling. Like, I can't get into LEO because I'm not from the LEO bag. I'm like, well, I got to tell you, I know a lot of shooters that are teaching LEO and primarily LEO at a lot of occasions that have zero LEO or mill experience. Yeah. Oh yeah, well, you have to be a grandmaster. No, I mean, they're not necessarily grandmasters, but most of them are because they put in the work to do it. So like, maybe that's the reason. Maybe you should become a better shooter and improve that out, and maybe that happens for you.
They want to give an excuse that does not include their lack of proficiency. Yeah. It's because of this, that, or the other thing. Maybe it's because you're not good enough. I don't know. That hurts. That's a kick in the jimmy. But guess what? Sometimes you're just not good enough for this crowd. That's fine.
Get better.
Get better. The bottom line is nobody's stopping you from getting better except for you.
Yeah,
your desire is not there. Like you don't want to get, it's like somebody that wants to, back to fitness, somebody wants to be super fit and, jacked and tanned. That doesn't happen by accident. There's a lot of work, and it doesn't happen in 2 weeks.
There's a commitment level.
Yeah, in 7 months, you'll go, wow, man, I've gone a long way. I've got another 7 months to go. It's like, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a ton of work when you look in the mirror and you go, I look exactly the same as I looked yesterday.
Yep.
But it's like, if you want the props that dude gets or that chick gets that's jacked and tanned, you have to do all the work that got them there. And people, they omit that. Yeah, they want the shortcut, or they want to go, oh, I'm not fit because they didn't let me into the gym kind of thing. It's like, just stop.
Yeah, I get it. It's also that it is, going back to overcomplicating things, it's shooting. Yes. This is not magic. So there is a process for doing this. You just have to commit to the process and then put the work into that, and stay committed to it. But I guess the biggest thing would be just consistent. You mentioned that even as an instructor, you still got to go shoot. The best ones out there, again, a lot of the guys that I look at, and a lot of those names have come up. They're constantly doing that.
The proficiency is increased in inches, not yards and feet.
Right.
Like people don't realize that. You bust your ass for 3 weeks. And you get a little bit. You're like,
same in fitness.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's why the parallels, you're like, oh, I know this is fitness. The parallels are remarkably close. Is you do a ton of work and you get a little bit of benefit. Yep. And then you do a ton of work and you get a little bit more benefit. But it's still little.
The compounding benefits over time are where the real results show.
Exactly. And it's consistent. That's the thing.
So here you are. How old are you now?
What's that?
How old are you?
58.
Shit, man. Fuck, man. I hope I look that good in 10 years. Jesus. All right. So you're 58 years old. CTT Solutions been doing this since 2009.
Yeah, on my own. Yeah.
Fuck. Like that's the first F-bomb I've dropped on this. But fuck, that's a
while, man.
That's a while. So with where you are now, we talked about the future of the industry, kind of where it currently stands, the things that you're doing. It's no secret what you're doing out there with classes like you're doing, Mike. You're doing the thing. What does this look like? I mean, what are we looking at in the next 5 years? I mean, are you just going to do this till you can't? You're going to do it till you don't want to? What's the deal?
I've got some other stuff that that I'm working on right now. I'm kind of in negotiations with about certain facilities, working with them to do some stuff. That's exciting. That's not going to change necessarily. It's not going to change the business in the sense that I'll have to have more of an emphasis on helping structure this facility. Which is going to be pretty cool. I can't really go into it now. But also Pat, my partner, Pat Doherty, he's like a freaking brother to me. Awesome guy, really good shooter, solid copper, been around a ton. He and I, like once he retires, then that's going to be as we branch. Then as I'm doing some of those other endeavors, he's going to be the lead on that. And then eventually, we'll figure out if there's somebody else we can put in. We'll start to build on it. But I've waited a long time because I wasn't trying to plus it out. Just for the monetary value. Okay, we're going to plus this out, and now it's the brand. To me, the brand has to have a level of quality, and the people have to be able to connect to that. And having worked with Pat for a couple of years now and teach together, or having him teach classes on his own, people like the guy because he's a good guy. He really cares. He understands. He understands shooting. He's good at it. He can demonstrate it. He's a follower of the modern shooting. Like you don't see him very much because he's still working. He's still doing stuff. But it's like he watches stuff that all those names, the usual suspects, Matt and Ben and Joel and Juancic. And he just sent me a video of Casey Asubio doing this, like drawing 3 shots in like 1.51 seconds on a 12-inch play. Some just maddeningly fast stuff. You're like, I mean, that's amazing. I hate you, but I love you, but I hate you. Like, but that kind of stuff he's looking at, like how impressive that is. And he's looking at faster, more accurate, how to refine instruction. So he's
still evolving.
Yeah. He didn't stagnate. It's like, I'm a cop and I've got a great bio. That's great. He still enjoys it. And so Pat and I are going to build this. Once he retires, we'll build it out from there. And it's going to it'll define itself as it goes forward, but there's still a need for it. And the curriculum that we've created together is still working really well, and it's still well received. And that will evolve too. But it's not like, okay, I've got whatever 1.0 and 2.0 and that's what we teach. No, it is as the principles, as the methods and the methodologies change, like everything we do now is very, on the pistol side and the rifle side as well, is very vision focused. It's all about, visual discipline, anchoring into the target with your vision and allowing the vision to guide the guns, all that stuff that comes from the highest levels of shooting. on the sports side and as well on the mill side. And the two guys that, like I said, introduced me to that at a level of detail that's actually difficult to understand on the proficiency side was Ben and Matt. And then I'm starting to do it. And over the last year, I've really focused on it. And now I understand it at the level that I can truly interact with them at a peer level and go, yeah, I understand this. I'm trying this. I was just talking to Matt about it on the phone before I came out here about a drill that I set up that's an adaptation of the first part of his CQB warm-up and how I use no shoots to refine my vision point. That kind of stuff, that level is not easy to get to. It is, again, it's a simple concept. To truly understand it is difficult. So it's like, that's the evolution. I just keep trying to understand better and trying to adjust courses and make them more efficient and more useful to the people that are taking them so that when they leave, they genuinely leave with concepts and ideas and a mentality of how to train that's useful to them down the road. Not just, I'm not here to entertain you. If learning is entertaining, then I'm your guy. But if you want me to tell funny mom jokes and stupid crap like that, I'm not your dude.
Yeah, I think there's a part to this just with the learning over time. We talked about this, not overcomplicating things, being able to instruct somebody or coach somebody or get them to get it without the word salad and or stand at the pulpit and feel good about yourself. Like, I'm the man here. You're going to listen to me the whole time.
Yeah.
The evolution piece and the constantly trying to get better and then being able to put it in a way, this is a talent and a skill, put it in a way that the person can understand. So it's kind of like take the meat and spit out the bones. So of all the things that you're learning and all the things you just described there from the people, it constantly evolves and it gets a little bit easier to maybe explain. And then as you're trying to explain it to somebody else or to coach or teach somebody, you're learning what they're picking up and what they're not picking up.
Yes.
And so that evolves.
Your message is refined by the recipient a lot of times, if you're aware.
So that is the skill. Right. That is the skill that gets learned over time. And so I think that's where if more instructors took that approach to things, rather than I have to book classes, I have to put people in the seats, I have to have the fancy thing, I think they would have a lot more longevity in this. And the most successful people I know that work in the field of education, right, and in coaching or instruction are those people that are constantly trying to evolve. And they're doing that not just by in isolation, going to the gym, going to the range. It's they're working with other people and they're constantly seeking like what value can I extract from what this dude over here is doing. And obviously you have to be in the right room. So you mentioned some names, right, of being in the right room. I just want to for the consumer that's listening to this, it's like, dude, these guys are way at another level. You're right. They are. They're a different level. Yeah. It's not that if you got into their room, you're going to be in the wrong room. You're just going to be in the room where a lot of stuff might go way over your head initially, right? But over time, if you listen to the fundamentals and the things, because you've broken it down into a way that people can explain it, you can take some stuff away from that and you can extrapolate on that over time. But the being in the right room with the right people is the thing I think a lot of people struggle with. One, because I think they believe they should be in a room that they're not supposed to be in. This a little early, man, or whatever, or opposite. They've been in the same room for too long and they need to get the fuck out of there.
Yeah. You're in an echo chamber. Yeah. If people don't check you and people always agree with you, you're in the wrong room. You're not getting the feedback you need. And I think there's a lot of people in this industry that want to talk because they want you to listen to them. I want to talk because I want you to understand and I want to learn something from how I spoke that to you. Like I want to get feedback from you. Each time you interact with someone, they should get information that is useful to them and you should get feedback that's useful to you that says my message was received properly or more than likely I need to tweak it a little bit this way or tweak it a little bit that way. I can refine it a little more. I can simplify it. It's to me, that's the part that I pride myself in is like clear, concise, and unambiguous. And I've gotten a bunch of people have contacted me and said, I appreciate the way you talk about red dot shooting. Because I'm like, hey, if you stare at the target, your vision will pull the dot where you're looking. If you look at the dot will pull your vision where the dot goes. Right. It's that simple. Now, doing it simple and easy are two different things.
Two totally different
There's
things.
a level of visual discipline. And then I try to use things like words that give you a visual perspective. I want you to anchor your vision into the target. Right. I want you to hold onto something in that target with your vision. They understand that. It's the rest of it. I need to have an image. My words need to be clear and concise and unambiguous with an image that you can recreate and go, this is what I need to do.
Now I can condition myself to do this.
Yes. And I think that's the refinement the refinement of the message, even if the information is correct, if your message is garbled, it's really hard for people to understand it. And the worst thing you can do is have a confusing message, have it misconstrued and taught wrong.
Yeah.
Now you're trying to unteach it. You're like, oh, this is a problem. Yeah. Because you got a blank canvas, you throw paint on it, and now you got a problem trying to get the paint off or cover it.
Or cover it up. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think people go, I have the right message. And it's like, okay, maybe you do, maybe you don't. The delivery is going to tell me if that's the case, and the performance of the students after the delivery. And there's a lot. Are we
measuring that? Yeah.
Yeah. How do you quantify that? Are we just
showing up?
Yeah.
Are we just showing up?
So the level that, the room that I'm in, I consider myself the dumbest guy in the room. And I'm putting out information within that, and people are giving me feedback on it and all that. Now, whether I am or I'm not, I want to look into a peer group and go, I feel like I'm getting more from them than they're getting from me, which inspires me to do more and work harder. That's how the room should be. If you go in there and go, yeah, these guys are all coming to me because I'm the grand, high, exalted mystic ruler and I have all the information, then go somewhere else. And it's like too many people, the ego piece, and that ties into everything we're talking about in this industry. They create a fantasy ego of themselves. And it's like this cool guy, however you present yourself as being the coolest dude ever. I'm just the same goofy dude I've been forever. Everybody that knows me for years is like, yeah, he's a goofy bastard, but he's the same one he's been since I've known him in the freaking 90s. Like, he's no different. I got my Super Bowl ring. I did my cool stuff. I got a beautiful wife. I'm like, I got a great daughter. My life is good. I enjoy this because I enjoy it. I enjoy teaching, and I know there's utility in what I teach. I'm not trying to do it so you'll tell me I'm a good guy. I think I'm a pretty good guy. Am I the best guy? No. Am I the worst guy? No. But I'm okay with me. I don't need your external validation. There's a lot of people in this industry that want to be cool. This is what makes them cool. Mm-hmm. I think that is so corrosive to the product, because now the emphasis is on me getting my ego massaged. Like, I want you to leave here and be happier with yourself and your performance and go, going forward, I learned things that can help me. Like, I don't need you to tell me I'm a nice guy. I appreciate it. I do. And I'm not being like, oh, it doesn't matter to me. No, nobody wants to be viewed as a jackass, but I'm not doing this because I want to stoke my ego. I'm cool, man. I got it. I'm okay. But it's like, I would love to see you learn. When I get feedback from guys go, oh, I was in my third OIS and what you taught me saved my ass. That's everything to me. Literally, I get text message like that.
It's not a paycheck bigger than that, man.
Yeah, it's like, dude, I was on your shoulder that day in a good way. And that's, and it validates, and it is fuel. It is like freaking plutonium rods. It's like, boom, here's fuel for the next 5 years. You literally weren't there, but something that you gave this guy helped him stay alive and go back home to his family. That's what I want. The rest of it, well, whether people have t-shirts with my face on it on the back, I don't freaking care. Like, dude.
I might buy one of those.
To throw darts at.
Okay, last question here, because a lot of what you just said there, I think will resonate with a ton of people. But I made a statement once, and I shared this with you before. I was going to save it for the show, but I shared it with you last night. I made a statement once, and the statement was this in a podcast. And I made it actually a couple of times in a couple of different interviews, that I didn't think there were enough people, or let's just say there's nobody. I think I made it even a broader statement and said, I don't think there's enough people talking to the new person that's entering into this with regard to the things that they need to know. That message just isn't out there. Like, why aren't more people doing this? And why are the people, say, at the top level, that would be considered at the top level? And let's just call that Mike Pannone today. Why aren't they having more conversations, maybe publicly, and through social media, whatever else? And I got a message. I got a text message, and it was from you, and it said, "Hey man, I disagree with this statement. Here's why. There's a lot of people out there that are doing this. It's just there's a lot of other noise, and it's getting in the way. I know a lot of people that are talking very specifically to this crowd of people." And I thought about it, reflected on it. I was like, you know what, Mike, you're right. I should walk back on that. It was too broad a statement. There is noise, and it is getting it's conflicting. So I've made a promise to myself, if I ever got Mike in front of me, like in this kind of a format, what advice would you give the new person? So we can put this out there for the new person entering in that is trying to sift and navigate through all of this, as well as make time for their training and be a dad and go to jiu-jitsu and and have a life and all that stuff. What advice would you give them in terms of how to maybe organize themselves and getting the right information and applying it the right way?
Okay. First of all, if you go out and you on the shooting piece, let's talking like just pistols.
Yep.
Take at least a basic firearms course that where you have to demonstrate a proficiency and knowledge of the gun. It doesn't have to be super spectacular, but you have to actually, you can't just go to the store and you can, but you'd have to do a heck of a lot more work, and you would have to understand it better. Just get a gun and figure it out on YouTube. Yes, some people can do that, but it would take you forever. Just take a basic firearms course from someone in your area that is considered a reputable, instructor.
Before you buy the gun.
If you can, before you buy the gun, it's the way to do it. Usually you can go, especially in California, you can go to a shooting range, and they usually have rental guns, or they'll give classes, just an introduction to it.
Yep.
Okay. And then do some basic training on your own, which is mostly the actual gun handling part, loading the gun, unloading the gun, reloading the gun, not spectacular on the marksmanship, but being able to manage the tool.
Which a lot of that can be done off the range. It can
be done dry. Most of it can be done dry fire with dummy rounds. And then take a class as long as you can do that. I'm going to do a video of that, things that I think you should be able to do.
I think you should.
And then go to a class that you think is over your head. Okay? Because you'll actually make more gains as long as you're safe with your gun handling. You're going to make way more gains doing that, and you're going to start out with good habits. Okay? Don't be afraid to go to a class with a genuinely reputable instructor that's going to push you.
Yep.
Okay? And I would also say, I would highly discourage going to, fantasy camp class where everybody's rolling around on the ground and shooting guns and fall to your back. Stop it. We just need to shoot guns first. You need to be really good at the shooting piece. And so look around and watch as a consumer. Look at the people that are just shooting, that aren't selling war stories, that aren't rolling around on the ground, shooting between their legs and all that. Like, you don't need that right now. Right now, what you need to do is just to master that tool at an intuitive level. I can make this gun do whatever I want. Maybe I can shoot really straight. Maybe I can't shoot so straight, but I'm in control of this gun 100% of the time. And then go to a higher level, well-regarded instructor in the industry, and you can figure that out, on your own. Like I mentioned a bunch of names.
Yeah.
There's if you are looking to get better faster, you're going to have to get outside your comfort level. And you learn that the more you train, because the more you get outside your comfort level, the more you push your boundaries, the better you get faster. Otherwise, you'll maintain mediocrity as long as you possibly can because it's safe. So if you can go take a class at a range before you even buy a gun, because it's going to help you figure out what guns you like, or if you have a particular proclivity, do that. You get a basic education on it. Now you're a more educated consumer when you go out to buy your own gun. Then buy a gun and get more training. If you get another basic class, as long as you're comfortable managing the gun. I can load the gun, I can unload the gun, I can reload the gun, I can do all that. Then practice that. Go buy dummy rounds. Just practice loading the gun, unloading the gun, because dexterity drives your ability to concentrate on the marksmanship piece. If you can't control the gun subconsciously, if I can't intuitively unload a pistol while I'm talking to you, then I'm not in control of that gun completely. I need conscious effort in order to remember what I'm doing, and I'm not ready for.
That's interesting. Nobody's presenting that. Right?
No,
like this. Nobody's presenting that,
and it's that comes from years of doing like conscripts with a second grade education. Before we taught them how to shoot, I finally realized I have to teach them how to manage the gun, unload the gun, reload the gun. I had them disassemble rifles, put them back together, all that. So they understood the tool. Now, when we start the shooting piece, they're not worried about hitting the wrong button and making the thing go boom at the wrong time. So their attention span is now directed towards the shooting part. And it's the same thing when you start talking about, just regular stateside, educated American shooters. Once you can control the device, then you will open up bandwidth for me to talk about marksmanship. Like until then, I did women's classes in Southern California, and the women there had no knowledge of guns at all. I sat down and had them disassemble all the guns, put all the guns back together, disassemble each other's guns, showed them what all the parts were, what everything did, loading, unloading with dummy rounds, all that. They didn't fire a shot until almost noon on that morning. Okay. But they could take the gun apart, put the gun together. They could load it. They could unload it. They could make sure it was clear. Everything. Glocks, Berettas, 1911s, all of it. They understood it intuitively. It was simple. Then when we got to the shooting piece, I'm like, hey, we're just going to do a bunch of reloads initially. Now it's weapons handling. Now they can manage the gun. Now we'll start talking about marksmanship. And every one of them could hit an AC zone plate at 40 yards consistently. And we quantified consistently as 80% of the time. So there were women that had never touched a handgun that were terrified that could hit an AC zone steel at 40 yards with the gun they brought with iron sights.
By the end of the day.
It's not hard. There's no magic in this. And I used to tell them in class, I can't even run my own freaking ice maker in my house. Okay. This device is really simple. You can do this. And when you demystify that, what you realize is that gun handling, being able to manage the device, is the foundation for the marksmanship piece. Because until you can manage the device, you will not hear me talk about sights and trigger. It's like, wah, 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 wah. And in your brain, you're like, wah, wah, wah. I hope this thing doesn't go boom at the wrong time. You're still afraid of the device because you don't really know how to control it. And too many people don't understand shooting well enough to understand, and don't understand adult learning well enough to put those two together and go, okay, like back to driving a car. You don't learn to drive a car on a freaking racetrack. You don't learn to drive a car on the highway. You learn in a parking lot where you can make a couple of mistakes. But once you start to learn how to use the brake and the clutch and the shift and all that, then we drive around town. Then we drive on a highway. Like but you have to learn how to intuitively run that motor vehicle before you can start managing traffic. Okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of people start, or where I heard a lot of people start, is just with like talking about guns in general, the difference between different guns, like, full-size guns versus micro guns and things like that. And I not bringing that up because you've spent a lot of time there lately, but, maybe you want a Glock, maybe you want to, this is a dual action, this is a striker fired, that kind of stuff. Like that means nothing to somebody that's entering into the space. Nope. They may hear some of that, but that doesn't mean any.
It's Greek.
It's overload. Yeah, it's like trying to download. I've used this before, but it's like trying to download the Windows or the Apple operating system onto like a Commodore 64. It's just you don't have you use the word bandwidth. Yep. Bandwidth. I think it's actually pretty novel. I don't know that I've heard anybody really talking about it that way, but I do know some instructors that do that. Mm-hmm. So it's just not a popular message. So that's a really good takeaway for people that are listening to this, or maybe just getting to know you or already know you. And instructors out there that are like, hey, how can I be better for my community, and bringing people in and helping them understand how to be better at this without having to say it differently. Sometimes they just need to know more, and the knowing more is working through the problem in a different way. And it's not necessarily in the curriculum. In the words that you're saying. It's just in the things that they're doing. And
the presentation. Everybody talks about right now, people that are more accomplished shooters, everybody talks about dry fire. Dry fire. Got to dry fire, got to dry fire. Yeah. Well, all I'm doing is dry firing the weapons handling part.
Right.
We're dry firing that first before we dry fire the shooting part, and then we do live fire on both.
Yeah,
but it's like
it makes perfect sense.
It's like this isn't a novel. It's not a novel idea or concept. It's just novel because of the way it's applied in firearms. We do it with everything else. Like I said, you don't get into a car and get on the highway.
Right.
You get in the car. Most people that learned the right way learned in a parking lot. I mean, back in a million years ago when we actually had to go driver's ed, I learned in a parking. We went into a parking lot. You got to learn how to stop and start and all that. You learn how to park in a parking lot with no cars in it, with just the lines.
Yeah, it goes back. And then YouTube and online stuff came along, and then it got really
it got weird.
People are learning how to do it all online. Yeah. But you can't do that. You can't do this, that, there. But you can learn a lot from the people that are putting out good information. I think that's great information. And obviously, everything that we've talked about today has been super fun for me. I look, man, I just want to say this, and I really mean this. There's been so much that I've gained from you over time, and to have you guys come out here and spend time with me, it means a ton. I really appreciate that. And if there's anything that I can do to help you continue down your path and all that on your journey, I always hear. It sounds weird saying that to you, if I'm being honest, because you've helped me so much. I don't know how I would even do that for you, but anything I can do to support you, man, like
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. It was great coming out here and, hanging with you and Cece and having dinner and all that, and you meeting the wife. And it's just, you're just in that circle now. And if I need something, trust me, I'll reach out, and then I'll just come visit when I'm out here. Just come see you guys. So I appreciate it, dude. I really do. It's not, there's not a bunch of people, actually. This is the only time I've done it, where I would travel to sit down and talk to somebody. And it's more than that. It was getting, because we had talked before, but it's like, this podcast does a lot of good stuff. It puts a lot of information out from a lot of people in long form. It's not a soundbite, but the people that listen to it, they get a lot out of it from the Chris Palmers and from the Matt Prankas, and, hopefully some from me. Like it's an important vehicle to redirect the narrative where it's supposed to go. And the parallels you tie, the parallel between the fitness industry, it's remarkable, the parallels. It is remarkable. Yeah. And that helps people that don't come from this. They go, okay, I saw that. Like I was a fitness guy and I saw that craze, and then it disappeared. So it's like, again, it's back to human nature. You take human nature and egos and you throw money at it, and all the same stuff happens.
Yeah, it's true. So true. Man, I just thank you for trusting me.
Yeah,
thank you for making the trip. This has been an honor. And thanks, Fetty, for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. And, and for your time. If there's ever an opportunity to do this again in some format, I would love to.
Oh, hell yeah.
I just need to come out to your direction next time and
come Salt Lake
and hang out. And one of these days, finally get to shoot with you in some way. That would be the ultimate pinnacle to all this for me.
Plan on it.
So that's me fanboying a little bit as we sign off. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you, man.
All right, brother. Thank you, man. I appreciate you too.